All right. David McKenzie with that report. Apparently, we're going right to the breaking news. This is our affiliate WABC out of New York City. There's been an explosion at a building at 116th Street and Park Avenue. That's in Upper Manhattan, or Harlem, I should say. East Harlem residents had reported hearing this large explosion in an apartment building around 9 o'clock Eastern. Fire was reported in the building. The structural integrity, as you can see, was definitely compromised in this building. It's also affecting trains going in and out of Grand Central Station, especially those trains headed from Grand Central Station to Connecticut, so expect delays there. We don't know what caused this explosion yet. Investigators are just arriving at the scene. Firefighters are trying to get things under control. Poppy Harlow is on the way to Harlem right now. When she arrives on the scene, of course, we'll provide much more information for you. All right. Are we going back to the plane investigation? Malaysia Flight 37. Of a building. Thanks so much. I want to get back to that breaking news out of New York City. There are multiple reports of a building explosion. Actually, clearly from the picture, there was some sort of explosion in the East Harlem section of Manhattan. It happened around 116th Street and Park Avenue. That's right near an elevated train line, Metro North. Traffic between the 125th Street Metro North station and Grand Central Station has been stopped. Information, as you might expect, is trickling in. This from WABC, our affiliate in New York City. We understand there has been at least one injury, but that injury is minor. Police called a level 2 mobilization for crowd control. Con Edison is also responding to shut off the gas in this area. These are Twitter pictures also coming into us. You see the smoke rising from that building at 116th and Park Avenue. We understand Metro North, as I said before, has elevated tracks through that area. The New Haven line service into and out of Grand Central Terminal is temporarily suspended until further notice due to this police activity. And of course, many firefighters are now on the scene getting a grip on what happened. I don't know whether this was an apartment building under construction, whether there were people inside the apartment building, whether this is even an apartment building. We just don't have much information as of yet. One of our producers, Adam Reese, is on the scene right now. Do we have him on the phone yet? He is seconds away. Apparently, Poppy Harlow is also on her way to the scene, but you can see this thick black smoke pouring from the building. Very disturbing pictures. Adam Reese, you on the phone now?
Hello?
Hello, Adam. Describe the scene for us.
Okay, there are a number of firefighters here. I'm on 116th between what police in Madison and Park, and they're still making their way into the explosion. All buildings devastated, windows blown out. They've got at least 3 or 4 hook and ladders up at the scene. With CNN, can I just ask you what the latest is? We're live. Please. Okay. The scene here is many cars covered in soot, cars with blown out windows, stores with blown out windows. We haven't seen this kind of smoke in a fire here in New York City in a very long time. Certain parts of the area are clearing out, but heavy smoke still covers at least a 3-block radius here. That's about what I can tell you now, Carol. We just arrived on scene. Most of the emergency personnel all have masks on because the smoke is so heavy. People are being evacuated from all neighboring buildings, and they're still making their way into the explosion, the building where the explosion took place. I can't really tell due to the smoke exactly how much damage that particular building suffered, but a lot of emergency personnel, police going through buildings, evacuating, fire personnel putting out fires, and again, a lot of damage along the street, blown out car windows, blown out store windows, and very heavy smoke emanating from the building
Yeah,
which the fire department is still trying to bring under control.
I probably have a better picture of the building than you do because you're probably not able to get very close because police are obviously cordoning the scene, but it appears that it involves one building. Are you hearing it might involve other buildings as well, Adam?
It's pretty focused, Carol, and again, heavy smoke, very heavy smoke, which, like you said, you're seeing is still coming out of the building. Very, very heavy smoke is what I can tell you from here. At least 4 fire engines with their ladders going into the building. They're being blocked by the heavy smoke. It's really, can't really tell what's causing such heavy smoke. And again, all emergency personnel wearing masks here. Very heavy smoke. They are knocking out glass windows of stores and a lot of glass windows of some of the residences here as they evacuate all the residents and people who work in the stores along this street, along 116th between Madison and Park.
Adam, this building where the explosion took place, was it occupied?
I can't really tell because of the very heavy and dark smoke. You can't tell what type of a building it was. At least I can't tell from my vantage point.
Well, we know WABC is reporting it was an apartment building. Poppy Harlow is also on the phone. Poppy, are you with me?
Carol, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear. What are you seeing?
I am on 116th and Madison, between Madison and Park, which is the block where firefighters are fighting this right now. I just spoke with a firefighter from FDNY who told me it was multiple buildings, confirming multiple buildings. We do not know more than that how many. We do not know if they were residential, how many people were inside of them. But as Adam was just saying to our viewers, I have lived in New York City for 11 years, and I haven't seen smoke like this anywhere in this area. We are east of Columbia University. We're in East Harlem, 116th Street in East Harlem. We're told that this explosion happened somewhere around 9:30 Eastern time. And coming up here, listening to local news reports, witness accounts on the radio here, one woman called from Frederick Douglass Boulevard, which is about 2 to 3 avenues, which are long, long blocks from where I am. She said she heard the explosion this morning. So that gives you a sense of the magnitude, how big this was. Also, one of the main train lines out of New York City called the Metro North, that runs right in this area with tracks above ground. And another person in the area also called in to the local news saying that there was debris on those tracks. So just to give you a sense of the magnitude, I just tried to walk up to the building and got about a half a block away and was turned away by the police. They're keeping everyone out of this area. And as Adam said, everyone is wearing masks right now. Extremely heavy smoke, so much so that when I got even a block away, I was coughing. That's the scene. And I'm not sure, Carol, are people seeing aerial pictures of this yet?
We are. We have an aerial picture courtesy of WABC, and we see a large hole in the middle of this very large building on 116th. I can't tell whether the apartment building is occupied because maybe they've evacuated, maybe it was under construction. I just don't know, and I don't want to speculate, frankly. WABC was reporting 1 minor injury. Of course, there could be more. We don't know. The other thing we don't know is what caused this explosion. Con Ed is on the scene. It could be a gas line. It could be something else. We just don't know. Is anyone talking about that yet on the scene, Poppy?
They're not yet, but we literally just arrived. I had a moment, stopped to NYPD. You know, no comment right now. We're obviously making more calls. FDNY telling us multiple buildings. That's all we know. I'm going to take a moment, if it's all right, Carol, talk to some of the people here because you've got shop owners out on the street, passers-by, residents, all wondering what's happening. There are, my best estimate, well over a dozen ambulances, fire trucks. What I am not seeing at this point, Carol, though, is any stretchers, any paramedics carrying anyone that may have been injured out. I'm not seeing that at this time. That doesn't mean that hasn't happened, but I'm telling you we are not seeing that from our vantage point at 116th Street in Madison and East Harlem.
All right. Do I still have Adam on the line? Okay, so I have Adam on the line. So, Poppy, you go ask people questions, and I'll get back to you in a second. I'll let you do your job for just a second. We just heard from FDNY fire officials, Adam. There were 11 minor injuries reported now. Poppy reported multiple buildings are involved in this. Some kind of explosion happened at 116th and Park Avenue in East Harlem. What more have you been able to find out, Adam?
Nothing more. Some of the smoke does seem to be clearing on the street, but we still see heavy smoke coming from the roof or whatever was left from that building. I see some EMS units pulling out. Like Poppy said, we haven't seen, since we arrived, any people coming out on stretchers. We do see numerous ambulances, at least a dozen ambulances sitting here waiting for potential injuries. But thus far, at least from when we got here, we don't see any. Again, just to repeat, heavy smoke still emanating from that building on 116th between Madison and Park. Numerous fire personnel at the scene trying to make their way inside. I see a fireman here making room to provide more water to the scene. And, you know, as the wind shifts, the smoke is shifting. So right now, the wind is shifting to the west, and we're seeing more smoke coming our way. More emergency personnel arriving, as you hear, and just a lot of people talking about what they saw, what they heard, a very loud explosion that rocked the neighborhood. Poppy's talking to a few of them now. They didn't know what it was, and just trying to get a sense of how soon they can put whatever fire that is still emanating from that building out, and the smoke will clear.
Yeah, they're pouring lots and lots of water. They're up on ladders right now, Adam, because I know I have a different vantage point than you do with this live aerial picture. You can see the firefighters pouring water in what was this building. Firefighters are also on the roof of the building next door, it appears, and they're just sort of checking things out up there for right now, maybe checking for hot spots, I don't know, but they're pouring lots and lots of water on the remnants of this building, and lots of smoke is still pouring out of the hole that was that building. You mentioned before that a lot of windows were blown out nearby, a lot of car windows blown out. Just describe the surrounding scene to us again.
A lot of glass all over the street here. Numerous. The smoke is somewhat toxic. And that's why you see a lot of the emergency personnel with masks, fire department personnel, again, getting more water to the scene. You wanted to talk about some of the glass that's covering the ground, glass on the street, glass blown the store windows, several cars with glass blown out. Not sure exactly why that glass was blown out, but it could potentially be from what appears to be a very large explosion as described by a lot of the residents here.
All right.
I'm still trying to locate someone who can tell us what's going on exactly at the scene. The firefighters still there on at least 3 or 4 hook and ladders getting into that building to try to put the fire out. We're watching a fire department captain here opening up the hydrant for more and more water to get to the scene.
All right, just to recap, some sort of explosion has occurred in East Harlem, in that building you're looking at right there. Poppy, Harlow reports multiple buildings are involved, multiple buildings are damaged. The FDNY just told us there are 11 minor injuries so far. There could be more. This is all taking place at 116th between Park and Madison. That's in East Harlem. I'm going to turn things over now to my colleague Chris Cuomo. He'll take over from here. Take it away, Chris.
All right, thank you, Carol. We're going to monitor this situation carefully. Let's give you a reset if you're just joining CNN right now. You're looking at a live picture of Manhattan from our affiliate WABC. And in our partner in this story, it's been going on now for about a half an hour. Here's what we understand. This was the site of two buildings, contiguous buildings, meaning that they were joined with one wall. There's believed to have been a major explosion in at least one of the buildings. Firehouses from around that area, at least 4 houses are involved in responding to this. Firefighters say they have the situation under control. What is that situation? You see the obvious smoke. They are saying right now that a lot of the smoke is coming from their efforts to put out what seems to have been an explosion. The proof of that, there is a debris field that goes onto elevated railroad tracks. That are Metro North tracks there. Service has been suspended. There are firefighters on top of the building on each side. Why? Because they want to make sure that there is no damage of fire and continued burning that winds up contaminating or spreading to those buildings. The two buildings involved are pre-war, meaning they date before the 1940s. Older buildings, generally oil-burning buildings. That could be a clue. There is not much of a fact pattern to go on beyond that. However, these two buildings that were joined were what are called multiple-use buildings. On the storefront level, if you go on Google Maps and you take a look at 116th Street and Park Avenue, you will see these two buildings. And they were on the bottom. One of them was a Spanish Christian church. The other one was a piano repair shop. On top of each were 4 or 5 levels of apartments, usually somewhere between 2 and 4 apartments per floor. That is fueling the immediate concerns about injuries. So far, there are 2 surrounding hospitals who are expecting casualties. The numbers right now are low, but firefighters are saying there are casualties. Control room, do we have a fire official on? Okay, we have Tom Van Essen, who's the former commissioner of the NYFD. Commissioner, can you hear me? It's Chris Cuomo in New York.
Yes, Chris, I can.
Now, my understanding from the brothers on the street is that they have it basically under control, but it's multiple houses responding. Do you have any fresher information?
You can see how difficult it is for them as that smoke gets lighter. That part of the fire is out, but some of the other stuff, the darker stuff, is really nasty smoke. Looks like it's pretty toxic, and they're having trouble getting that part of the fire out. They really want to get in there as quick as they can, because like you said, the minor injuries are so far. The people that are in there now are going to be seriously injured if there are, and hopefully none of them are caught in an immediate explosion. They want to get those poor folks out if there's somebody in there now because of that heat and smoke. Will kill them if the explosion didn't. So it's a tough job. It's hard to get in there now with all that debris. Looks like it's collapsed. Like you said, there were quite a few apartments above the ground floor, so there's an awful lot of debris to get in there underneath.
Now, we're in a major trafficked area here. This is 116th and Park Avenue, highly trafficked, the railroad, the elevated railroad adjacent to it. These buildings, I understand, are contiguous buildings, kind of mother-daughter situation with the joined wall, Commissioner. Storefronts on the bottom, multiple stories above, pre-war buildings. What is the expectation, judging by the smoke, the explosion, and the level of collapse, about what the possibilities of cause are here?
Well, you right away you think it's gas because it's just such a violent explosion. You can see the debris everywhere. That's probably where the minor injuries came from in the beginning. Anybody that was caught in the blast directly has probably got a lot worse than a minor injury. And the folks that are caught in the collapse, you can only hope that they've got enough air and oxygen to breathe and not too close to the fire, which is pretty significant. It looks like the fire in parts of the building getting worse, probably because the water's just not getting down to it because of all the debris.
And that's an important factor. When you have a collapse and something's burning underneath it, the assumption, common sense would tell you, well, maybe it gets smothered, but often that's not the case, right? That's something we learned very horribly on 9/11. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, we sure did. You can't just keep thinking that the water you're pouring onto it is getting to where the fire is. The water has a tendency to just go in the easiest direction. If there's something that makes it running away, or if there's a big part of plywood or something like that that's blocking you from getting at the fire itself, that just builds up in intensity down there and just getting hotter and hotter. So anybody that's close to it, the smoke's coming in their direction, they're in real trouble. And that's what the firefighters know that right now. And you can bet, from everything you see, you can bet that there's guys trying to get in from the back, trying to get in from the side. It's a tough street because Park Avenue is very narrow there because of the railroad. You know that they're coming in the back. They're probably digging in through the basement. There's probably guys underneath that right now, in some parts of it anyway, taking enormous risks trying to find people, even where that water is still coming on and the heat and smoke are as intense as it is.
It's an important point, Commissioner. I got a quick message before I had to come on here from one of the guys who's responding to the area, and he said, you'll see they're all up in the air, but they have to stay a little bit of distance from it because of the nature of the smoke and also the heat. Obviously, heat rises, and it must be incredibly hot for the guys that we're seeing in the buckets. And also, you are exactly correct that Park Avenue, which is one of the broader boulevards that we have here in Manhattan, 2 lanes at least on each side of traffic, is choked off because of Metro North there, so they couldn't get directly in front of the building. How long can they stay in those buckets dealing with that kind of smoke and that kind of heat? How often do they have to swap out?
Well, the guys in the buckets are the least of your problem. Those are all good units up there. I see 43 right there on top of it. Those guys will stay there as long as it's necessary. The problem is, the more water they put on there, the more difficult it is for the people that you need to get in there. There's rescue units, special operation units, I'm sure at this moment, trying to work their way in, taking a certain amount of risk because they believe there might be people in there. And you have to weigh the amount of risk based on the opportunity that you might have to save people. If it's too late in some spots, then you've got to really think about the risk you're putting the firefighters in. All of that debris is all in jeopardy of falling even further. You just don't know how many voids are underneath, what the water's doing, pushing things out of the way. It's a really dangerous situation right now, but with people that they're unaccounted for, and if there are people that are unaccounted for, which there usually are, those guys are really thinking hard, trying to get in there as quickly as they can.
Their understanding is there was no advance warning of this. There is an expectation that people are trapped. There was evidence on the street level when guys were getting there that there may be people in distress. There's no further reporting about that. There's also an unknown issue of how deep down the building did go, as you're pointing out, Commissioner, what the basement structure is of these buildings, so what the stability of that debris is. Now, something that you can explain for us. We're seeing a lot of ladders. We know there's heavy response. We hear that a 4th alarm was just called for. Will you explain what that means to firefighters? How much response does that mean? How serious does that make it?
Well, you probably get 20 or 30 people with each alarm, depending on the amount, 5 or 6 units. It was something like this. They bring in all the special units too, all the collapse units, all the rescue units, all the squads that are available. As many, they need a lot more ladder companies on something like this they might normally need, because at some point there's going to be just pulling that stuff out of the way. I'm sure there's heavy equipment that's on the way there from Office of Emergency Management will coordinate all of that. They've got bulldozers and things like that are on the way. They may already be there, just waiting for a signal from the fire department that they can move in. Nothing can happen until they stop those heavy streams. Those heavy streams themselves are very dangerous, but until they get a better environment for searching, there's only a few people, I would imagine, at this point, that have any way of getting in there and searching.
The water is creating smoke, obviously, that makes visibility difficult, as you're pointing out. Also, something else we're understanding about the situation. They're putting water. They have an advantage and a disadvantage here. There's only one more building to the south of them. However, to the north, there's a much bigger apartment structure. And we do believe that the wall, the adjoining wall of the south building has also been breached. And we're watching the hose be put on that wall at all. So now there's another building that they maybe have to deal with there, expanding the zone of coverage that's necessary, Commissioner.
Well, that makes the situation even worse, because those heavy streams can knock a building down. So those guys have to really be careful not to accelerate any damage that's already done to that building. And like you mentioned, if there were 2 buildings in there, one of them was in, tearing it down or doing major demolition and reconstruction, that always weakens the building next to it. They're always worried about the ground coming under, washing away underneath. Now they got all that water. So this is just a monumental problem, and a hope, I'm sure, by all the chiefs there is that there aren't any people in that building, because as the time goes by, with all that water and all that smoke and toxic fumes, it's becoming more and more difficult to get to them.
Now, Commissioner, we do believe on scene 168 firefighters, 39 units. It does sound like this is certainly reaching about 4 alarms plus ancillary units. Please stay with me, Commissioner. I want to get to somebody on the scene to try to get us more information. Eric Burse, a student at Columbia University, says he got to the scene soon after the explosion, puts us about 35, 40 minutes ago. Eric, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
What do you see? What do you hear?
Hi, I got here about 10 minutes after the explosion. I live at 123rd and Lemon. I felt it all the way there in my living room, kind of shook. When I got here, I saw tons of people kind of pouring out of a few apartment buildings here at 116 and Madison Avenue in East Harlem. There's a few groups of people here speaking with the police. I'm not sure. They haven't confirmed whether they have a loved one or anyone inside. But there's groups of, 50 or so people standing on each side of the street, outside of the laundromats and bodegas here, trying to get some information from police about what's going on. I'm actually looking here at the side. There's more groups of people coming out, some of them holding kids, covering their faces with blankets and cloths because of the fumes here. I'm also wearing a mask myself. A lot of these people are coming out. I'm not sure exactly where they're coming from or if they were in the building the whole time.
Well, Eric, do you believe that people are coming out of the building, that people came out of the building that collapsed, or are you talking about people from the adjacent buildings?
I'm not sure, sir.
Right.
They're kind of just walking down the street. The police closed off the blocks immediately from a point. But
so it's so heavily residential there, Eric, that people are probably being evacuated. That's probably the situation. It's so heavily residential there. You're seeing people being evacuated, trying to deal with it right now. How thick is the smoke on the ground?
I can see in front of me about 50 feet up until where the explosion occurred, then it gets pretty thick. Actually, a few firefighters actually just walked in with attorneys for, I'm not sure if people that might be in there. There's about 2 sets of them walking in there right
We're
now.
seeing it now. We're seeing it now, Eric. Those are stretchers. They can be for people who are obviously alive and injured. We're looking now at our first live picture from ground level. We're seeing the door that's blocking us would be a Con Edison support vehicle. Again, this area is all piped for gas. An explosion of this magnitude and power that's felt blocks away, where the man on the phone with us, the student at Columbia University, Eric Burse, was, to be felt like that type of concussive strength does lead to a propelled explosion, the theory being gas or oil, a burner, or a few lines under the road. That's that truck. This is the scene at ground level. What is most obvious is the smoke. Firefighters are dealing with that. It's coming from the explosion and the efforts to squash that explosion. The water mixing with fire is going to create the smoke. We understand that, but that's how difficult it is at ground level. To your left on the screen, you're seeing the view from above. Most of the firefighters addressing the fire with hoses right now are from above because of a few reasons. One, it gives them a better angle to go down. The buildings collapsed. This is not one building. It is 2 buildings that had a shared wall that went down. And to reset, we're looking in Manhattan at 116th and 117th Street on the east side of Manhattan on Park Avenue, ordinarily one of the broader boulevards. However, it's choked at this part of the city by the Metro-North elevated railway. On that railway, there's a debris field from what we believe to be an explosion of these joined buildings. The firefighters are therefore shooting down into this hole, trying to put out the fire. There have been injured removed from the building. There's an expectation of more. There's a lot of unknown because it is not clear that there was any advanced warning of this. The firefighters in those elevated buckets are dealing with extreme heat and smoke. You see, that's why they're getting down to stay low and obviously to try to see what they can. That's what we're dealing with right now. The situation's been going on for about 40 minutes. If Eric Burse is still with us, Eric, you still on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Is anything changing there as you look on the ground? Is there any other activity that's relevant?
No, a lot of some fire vehicles are leaving the scene. A police vehicle just got here with crowd barricades. The crowds here are growing by the minute. These are people that live nearby, also people that have told me that they have loved ones that live nearby, and they're not sure which building blew up or if their loved ones are there or somewhere else.
All right, Eric, thank you very much. Make sure you stay clear of that area. Listen to the firefighters. The situation far from over because of the adjoining buildings, and there's so much residential buildings there. There's so much residential capacity that they have to be very careful. The buildings that we understand, 2 buildings, 1 joined wall, multi-use, multi-purpose buildings, meaning that on the ground level, they were storefronts. One of them was a Christian Spanish church. The one next to it was a piano repair shop. Above them, 4 or 5 levels of apartments that went back far as well, could have anywhere between 2 and 4 units per floor, maybe more. So a lot of people lived in there. And now they have been fighting this fire for about 40 minutes. There's an adjoining wall of a building that, if you're looking screen left right now at your television, the smaller building, we believe the wall that was shared has been breached. They've been spraying a lot of water on that building. They could be doing it for 2 reasons. One, to make it somewhat insulated from flame and fire and heat, or because it is on fire as well, which is going to require more evacuations. On the phone right now, we have someone else on the scene, CNN producer Rose R.C. Rose, if you can hear me, what do you see there?
Yes, Chris, I'm standing, I would say, about 70 feet in front of this pile of debris, which is just swarming with firefighters walking all over it. You'd almost think this was a construction zone and they were building a building. There are little tiny bricks and pieces of wood that have collapsed into a pile toward the direction of the train station. In fact, there's significant amounts of debris that actually have hit the steel posts that hold up the Metro North Commuter Railroad that runs alongside these buildings. Well, you see enormous amounts of smoke pouring through the center of this. There's a portion of the building that apparently has some like steel sheets of metal holding it together on one side that's first open, and that's where you can see like a plume of smoke where they're trying to, with hoses, wet the area so that the fire doesn't spread, and also to allow the firefighters to pick up and remove this debris. Just a painstaking process, like sort of pickup sticks. They're picking up just little tiny pieces of debris and moving them to the side.
Okay, Rose, make sure that you keep a clear distance there because the situation is still very much ongoing. You can look at the roof of the building that's clearest in view right now. Look how much debris is on top of it. That is evidence of what exploded from those buildings next to it. When this explosion happened, that's part of the debris that was shot off on top of it. We understand that there are 168 firefighters on the scene. There was a call for a 4th alarm. There are 39 units, plus, as former FDNY commissioner was telling us, a lot of support services as well. What does that mean? Well, you have special equipment and personnel for dealing with digging out of a situation like this, dealing with removal of people in very traumatic circumstances. You have gas at play here. There's natural gas that's fed to a lot of these buildings. We see trucks from that support as well. You have construction going on adjacent to it. That's going to create risks and different requirements for people on the scene. And this is all developing. Again, we're giving you live picture from the ground here in Manhattan as well as from above. We've been monitoring this situation since it happened for about 40 minutes. We will continue to do so. Yes, there are injured. The information on that is very premature. We've been talking to surrounding hospitals. They say they're treating one person. Maybe more are expected. There's not much on that. But these were multi-purpose buildings. Storefronts on the bottom. One was a church, one was a piano repair shop, and then several floors of apartments above. There could have been multiple apartments on each floor. This happened at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Right now we want to listen to John Del Giorno. He is the air reporter for WABC, a partner of CNN's. Let's listen into what he sees from above. Okay. John's not talking right now, but he will be. He's a local reporter here at WABC. He's trying to get the scene from above. There may be air restriction on him. We'll keep listening in to try and get you that reporting because it's important to understand this. You see there are men standing on one of the buildings on the side of where this happened. There are 2 reasons for that. One is to make sure that the situation is contained on that building. Fire spreads very quickly with these types of materials, especially with ongoing construction. It's also what they call eyes in the sky, the ability for firefighters to direct the traffic of firefighting efforts because they are upwind of this. Do you see how they are not being covered by the smoke? So they have a clearer field of view of what's going on, and they can communicate with the other firefighters that you see in the buckets who are actually being smothered by that smoke and heat. So they really can't see what they're shooting at. And you have to remember, those streams of water are incredibly powerful, so you have to be careful not to deal with any glass and other fragile structures. So that's what's going on right now. Let's get back to our producer, CNN Rose RC. She's on the scene. Anything changing for you there, Rose?
Yes, just about a half a minute ago, one of the firefighters gave the sign to move into a particular area of this collapse. And I'd say about 10 of them have mounted this pile of bricks and are now furiously trying to remove debris from a particular central area of where the collapse happened. Also, there's some Con Edison people out here on the scene that have cut some lines. They've allowed more emergency workers into the section where they are. So you can presume they're trying to work on the gas lines because Con Edison controls the gas piles here. Also, they have started to pour water from some overhead ladder companies, towers that have come in, and they're focusing on the central section of this fire that seems to be continuing. There's a part on the side where the firefighters are smoldering, but there's a part that seems to remain active right in the center of this collapse.
All right, that's consistent with what we've been understanding so far. Rose, thank you for the reporting. We'll get back to you, figure out what you can from there. We have another reporter live on the scene, Poppy Harlow, who's trying to get an understanding of how it's developing there. Poppy, what's the latest?
Yeah, hi, Chris. As you can see, we are standing on the corner of Madison and 116th Street. I'm going to put the phone down for a minute while I talk to you. We're at 116th. We're about half a block away from where this explosion happened. What we know right now, when I was on the air earlier, we had not seen any stretchers coming out with anyone injured. We have since seen 2 people coming out on stretchers, one of them with an oxygen mask on, being taken into ambulances here. There are well over a dozen ambulances here. What we know from FDNY, 138 members of the FDNY are responding. You've got OEM here, the Office of Emergency Management. Our Susan Candiotti reporting that on a precautionary basis, they have sent the NYPD bomb squad here. You have many members of the NYPD. This fire explosion taking place at 116th Street. The smoke is so heavy. The moment we got here, we were coughing. It's still pretty difficult to breathe comfortably. I want to bring in Angelica. You can come here. She lives in this building, if we can pan up right here, which is right on the same block as where the explosion happened here in East Harlem, also known as Spanish Harlem. What happened? I know you were stuck for a moment.
Yes. I heard a big explosion. I didn't know what was going on, so I decided to look out my window. It's a building complex, so you could see the other side of the building. It started going into smoke. My neighbors came banging on my door telling me to get out. That I guess they was evacuating the building, and I couldn't get out. My door was jammed. Everything off my windowsill fell, and I guess the impact of the explosion jammed the door as well.
How loud was it?
It was extremely loud. I couldn't even explain it to you if I couldn't. It was just so loud that it woke me out of my sleep. That's how loud it was. It was loud enough. Yes.
I saw a man, it looks like your father, was it? Came up just a few minutes ago and embraced you.
Yes, he did, because he was so worried of the way that I called him. I was actually almost having an anxiety attack because I was crying and I didn't know what to do. My stepmom, my boss even called the fire people, everybody, and they never sent nobody up. And my stepmom had to sneak it through the back to try to open the door for me.
We were also just speaking, Chris, with a woman named Olga who was sobbing in tears. She ran up here, ran blocks and blocks because her daughter, she lives on this block. I believe she was staying in your building, so I tried to console her, say that you were outside. Everyone in this building was all right, but she's still searching for her daughter. That gives you the frantic scene. She tried talking to NYPD, FDNY. She couldn't get any answers. Do you know anyone who lives in the building or possibly multiple buildings that have exploded?
No, actually no. The only building I was concerned about was the building that I lived in. I don't know anybody in the other building, but I was concerned because we are together as a whole.
A block. All these buildings are connected. How long have you lived here?
I've lived here for over like 5 years.
Do you remember, I was told by a local journalist who you were talking to earlier, remember him? Yes. Who was filming up here as well, that there was a pretty substantial fire here at 116th and Park as well a few years ago. Yes. Do you remember that?
Not incomplete because I wasn't around, but I did hear about it. My father and my stepmom was around.
And you don't know what might have caused that?
No.
Because there are questions remaining. Was this caused by a gas line? What could this have been caused by, and we certainly don't know yet. Thank you. I'm glad you're okay. We appreciate it very much. Chris, I'm going to throw it back to you as we talk to more people, but we know the Metro North, the line in and out of New York City, the train line that runs from here into Grand Central is suspended at this moment in both directions because debris from this explosion landed on the tracks of the Metro North. We'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Okay. All right, Poppy, thank you very much. Poppy Harlow on the scene in Manhattan, where we believe two buildings have collapsed after an explosion, at least partially. Firefighters are responding right now. Law enforcement officials tell CNN they are not seeing any connection to terror. Right now, this is about the potential for an explosion that could have been because of gas. Gas is what feeds the fuel to a lot of buildings in this area, which is 116th, 117th Street and Park Avenue in Manhattan. It's been going on now for about 45 minutes. There are at least 130 or more firefighters on the scene. It is a 5-alarm fire. That means the same thing in New York as it does wherever you live. It's a massive, massive effort here. There have been injured, but it's a very fluid situation. And again, the buildings have collapsed. Let's bring in Congressman Charlie Rangel. This is his district. He's in Washington, D.C., but there is a fire back at home. I'm sure, Congressman, you're very concerned about this situation. What's the best information?
Well, I tell you, it's just as frightening to me and the rest of the delegation as 911 is. We don't have the facts. We know it's a horrific explosion, and with me, it's only about 10 blocks from where I live and born and was raised, so I know the area, and it's right at the site of La Maqueta, which so many people may remember, one of the largest indoor markets that we've had historically, that was created by Mayor LaGuardia, and so it is totally unbelievable that something of this magnitude could happen in this community.
Well, what we're watching right now, Congressman, I'm going to put up, I don't know if you have CNN on down where you are, but I want to put up the Google Street View of this area because we will see what the buildings were. Okay, now, we're looking a little bit south of the buildings, okay? You see the Park Deli. Then there is this apartment building, and then there are two, you see the two buildings next to that one that share a wall. Those are the buildings that are believed to have been collapsed. And when you get to see this view, you understand that they probably have all but completely and entirely collapsed because clearly the scene is all smoke where we now see building. And as I was saying earlier, Congressman, this is very familiar territory to you, but in this area, these buildings are called pre-war, meaning having been built before World War II, meaning that they're very old structures, but they are natural gas fed, and they're called multi-use. On the ground floor of those two buildings, as we monitor live picture, let's also go back to the Google map so people can understand what happened here. The two buildings on the bottom, Congressman, one was the Spanish Christian church, which you probably know. I live just a few blocks from these two buildings. I know that church. Hopefully it was uninhabited at this time in the morning during the week. Next to it was a piano repair shop, which also usually opens up a little bit later, so hopefully they were vacant. However, on top of those were 4 or 5 levels of apartments that could have 2, 4, maybe more units each, and that's going to be the great concern. We understand it's a 5-alarm fire right now, and that they're responding with ancillary units as well. The bomb squad is there because of gas and their analysis of what kind of explosions could come after this. As far as you know, Congressman, is the situation getting all of the resources it needs? Are all of the different agencies able to coordinate and get help there?
No question about it. My entire staff is there on the ground. They are working and getting information as to how we can be helpful from the fire. And the police department, the Red Cross is there. And I may be there right after the votes here in Washington. I was not able to see the television, but I know the area as you do, and it is compact with people. And the only news that doesn't sound terrible is that the timing meant that there weren't many people in the building, and I just hope. I'm so concerned about the people that may have been caught in this tragic event. So there's not much, but you can imagine how I feel is as though I went to work and then found out that my house was on the fire, and not knowing who was caught in it, what caused it, whether it expanded, or what's going to happen next. And so I don't feel very comfortable now in talking about this tragedy, and I am making every effort as soon as the vote's finished to get it home and see what what, if anything, I can do.
Congressman, I appreciate you being on with us. You are right. This is a densely populated area. There are a lot of families here. We're hoping for the best. We know we have our best on it, the FDNY. Nobody fights fire more with more enthusiasm than these guys do, and certainly we're calling out all the units here, but I think we do have to reserve judgment until the facts allow us to understand what happened when these buildings collapsed, not just the cause but the consequence. We know that only a few people have been taken out on the scene. There have been seen stretchers of people who've been brought out, but not many. Now that could be for many reasons, good and bad, and we'll reserve judgment on that until we get more information. What we know at this time, if you're joining us on CNN, is that there has been a major explosion of 2 buildings in Manhattan, an area on Park Avenue on the east side of Manhattan. The buildings were joined by one wall. They had stores on the bottom. They had multiple layers of apartment on top. We are not sure what the cause could have been at this time, but by descriptions of a massive explosion that was felt many blocks away, it does sound like it was fueled by natural gas, which is what the primary fuel source is in this area. Officials tell CNN they do not believe there is cause for any connection to terrorism at this time. They are saying that it is about a gas explosion, but again, very early in the situation because the urgency is on stopping the fire. There are buildings on either side that have certainly been damaged. One of them seems to have been breached by fire and is receiving a lot of water attention. You're looking in the right part of your screen at the elevated railway. That's Metro North. You'll see there's debris on it, even though it's some 50 feet in the air. These were 6-, 7-story buildings. Again, evidence of an explosion. Cars in the area have had windows blown out. They are covered by debris as well. There's a very significant evacuation going on. When it comes to the issue of the explosion and why we say it may be natural gas, Con Edison is the company that runs municipal gas in Manhattan. It was called to a possible gas leak right before the explosion. Okay? Now again, that doesn't tell us everything we need to know, but it is highly suggestive of what could cause an explosion like this, powerful enough to be felt blocks away and to actually bring down buildings. Old buildings, pre-1940s, but still buildings made of very solid materials. We know that there are at least 138 firefighters on the scene. This is a 5-alarm fire. That's a term that is familiar to people all around the country in terms of being just about the highest level of urgency you can have. Now, something interesting to note. You'll see on your screen there are firefighters on top of the building next to it. There are 2 reasons for that. One, to make sure that it doesn't spread to that building. Fire moves up very quickly. Heat rises, as we all know. The other reason is because of the wind, it is coming out of the north, which means it's blowing to the south. What that does is it blinds the firefighters in those bucket trucks that you see. It's hard for them to see what they're fighting, and it allows them to have what they call eyes in the sky of communication, where the men on that building can tell them where to direct their hoses. It's going to be very difficult the way this situation is set up for people to fight from ground level because there was an explosion, it's unstable, and there's all this water and smoke to deal with, both of which very dangerous to firefighters on the ground. New York 1 is obviously the local presence here for television and news. Let's listen into what they're seeing on the ground.
Boom! Thunder. It's like a heavy thunder. Heavy thunder.
Did you run outside?
Yes, I jumped on, put my clothes on, and came up the block here.
And
Park Avenue South.
And what did you see?
New York City's finest. New York City's bravest at its best. The fire department of New York City. A whole lot of people here.
They were in motion? People running to the explosion?
People running to the explosion. People out here photographing the situation. The exact location is 116 and 117 Park Avenue South. There's a piano store. There was a piano store there. It's up above the piano store that the explosion came from and the collapse.
All right, so we're listening to one of the witnesses on the scene there. We now return a live picture of Manhattan. There's been a massive explosion that we believe took down 2 buildings. It's a 5-alarm fire now. There's tons of rescue and fire support on scene. The bomb squad as well. We believe not because there's any connection to an explosive device, but it's believed right now by local authorities that it may have been a gas explosion the bomb squad experienced with handling that kind of situation as well. CNN will take a break, and then we'll come back to continuing coverage of this massive explosion of 2 buildings in Manhattan. Stay with us. Chris Cuomo here.
Download SnapFix for free.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, right now we're dealing with a situation. Michaela Pereira and Chris Cuomo here with you. Jonn Berman is on the scene of a massive explosion in New York City. We believe 2 buildings have been affected, brought down pretty much to the ground by what is believed to be a massive gas explosion. Local authorities are saying there's no reason to believe it's connected to terror or an explosive device, but here is the situation as we understand it. A bomb squad is on scene because they are trained in understanding explosions of this kind as well. There are at least 160 firefighters there. It is a 5-alarm fire. In terms of injuries, that's the obvious concern. Local hospitals have received a couple. We've seen some people come out of the building on stretchers, but it's too early for that kind of information. If you take a look at Google Maps, we'll show you what these 2 buildings were that are now gone. This is about 116th, 117th Street on Park Avenue in Manhattan. It may not mean much to you, but it's the east side of Manhattan, heavily residential. The buildings were multi-use. Older buildings from before the 1940s. On this storefront level of one was a Spanish church, the other one a piano repair shop. They are, if you look at this picture right now, Michaela, you can direct people to where they are, obviously, just a little bit up the block from here.
Right, and just right around the corner from that, Chris, is a much more heavily foot traffic area, a commerce area. This is probably a quieter street where this happened, but again, it is a concern because of all of those buildings that have those shared walls. We know this is an urban area. There's so many apartments, as you mentioned, multi-use buildings. We've also learned that at least one school in the area, not nearby, has been told to shelter in place. We're going to work some more information and find out about other area schools. We've got our man on the ground. Jonn Berman is in Harlem at this hour and can tell us what he knows live from the scene. John, can you hear us?
Michaela, we were just told by the NYPD, listen to this, 1644 Park Avenue appears to not be there anymore. That is one of the buildings, the NYPD telling us it just simply appears to be gone. That was the power of the blast there. And I can tell you, just standing here, the remarkable feature is the smoke. There is so much smoke out here, and it is spanning for blocks and blocks. You have people here now wearing masks to protect themselves from inhaling it. It is very dangerous, I imagine, to get too close to it without that mask. We are a safe distance right here, about a block and a half away. You can see the crews behind me working in smoke and soot and ash just covering the windshields of cars. Also behind me, very interesting, Con Edison crews, the power company here now. Just a short time ago, you all reported there is the sense now from Con Edison that perhaps this blast was caused by a gas leak. We have now seen the crews heading much closer to the scene of this blast. These 2 buildings that were affected, one, as I just said, not there anymore. We do not know the condition of the second building. Right now, they are searching these buildings to find out if there are people inside. The NYPD told us they simply do not know at this point, but it is well manned up here. 39 units from the NYPD, from New York Fire Department, I should say, some 168 members now working the scene of what was a piano store, what was a Spanish Christian church with apartments on top of them, and now one of those buildings simply gone. I should tell you, I used to live but 2 blocks from here. Michaela, I know you live not too far from here either. This is a residential area. This is a place where people are walking about the streets freely all the time. Our Poppy Harlow, Our Poppy Harlow has been working in the streets right now, talking to people. She has seen people with blood on their head. We've been told 11 injuries so far. Our Don Lemon, I think we have Don on the phone right now. Don is with someone, I believe, who witnessed this blast. Don?
Hey, John, I am here. I'm actually very, very close to the blast. We're with a business owner. We're less than a block, and I can see it as clear as day. You've got firefighters up on the hook and ladder. You've got Metro North. The Metro North train has been shut down in both directions here. There are police officers up on the Metro North train tracks. Police officers here where I am are wearing a dust mask, and some of them are wearing air masks, and they're gingerly going through the brick and the mortar from this building, and you can see the building is completely blasted out. I see several pictures of the video back, and it's still smoking from where I can see. George Lozano lives less than a block. His business is less than a block away, and we're actually standing inside of his business now. He says it's got to be 1552 has to be the address, because his address is 1600, pretty much in the same part of the block as that block. So you said, what, just about 9 o'clock? What did you hear, George?
A big blast. All the move is moving and shaking like an earthquake. And I got scared. I just left my car parking over there in front of the building. They got blasted. You've got on your jacket, I can see George has, you've got some debris. Things were still falling. You said your car, you tried to go get your car, which is in the same block? No, I just left parking. You just parked it? To come to open my office. When I open my office, it's starting the blaster. Yeah. So everything is shaking. And it's too strong. So people, everybody going out because they're screaming and crying because they got scared. Yeah. And was there dust? Was there smoke? It's flying everywhere like an explosion? Smoke and explosion, like the same type of explosion when the World Trade Center happened. There was dust going everywhere. Everywhere. Look at my office over here. Look. Yeah. Look. Yeah. And he's pointing out, we're standing in his office again, that's less than a block away, and we do see there's dust and soot everywhere, and the closer you get to the blast, the thicker it gets. But he says just about, he was sticking his key in the door, unlocking his office. The department remove about 11 bodies to the hospital, emergency. You saw them removing? Yes. I saw about 5 different persons bleeding all over, and they don't move it. Yeah. I believe they are dead. Yeah. Well, he's saying that he saw them removing bodies. From what we know right now, the people have been taken to 4 hospitals. The latest is that it's 16 injuries, 12 of them minor, taken to 4 hospitals. I don't know from my vantage point if there are any confirmations of anything that... Say again? They was under the bricks. You know, the 4th floor was really all down on top of the people. Yeah. So they are not alive. They are very damaged, very clear. So you saw them removing the people? Yes. Yeah. I saw the police and the fire department. They helping a lot to remove them, getting these people to the hospital. Yeah. Very fast. How long did it take for people to get here? That was in nearly 2-3 minutes. Okay, that's George Lozano, who is a business owner who's really, like I said, less than a block away. And I have a very good vantage point, and they're still going through. You can probably, Michaela and John, hear the jackhammering. But I'm going to toss it back to you if you have any questions.
Don, thank you so much. Just a few moments ago behind me, I don't even know if you can make it out now because the smoke is so thick. We saw crews working on the railroad tracks that go up and down Park Avenue. This is significant. This is a main transportation artery. All the trains that go to Connecticut and many of the trains that head to Westchester County in New York, the commuter trains, pass on those tracks. They are shut down right now, which means that depending on how long this lasts, thousands and thousands and thousands of commuters will be affected by this blast. That's just one side effect from it. Of course, the main effect is on these buildings, one of which, as we said, simply is not there anymore. 1644 Park Avenue, which was a 5-story building, is now gone. 1646, the building next to it, we do not know the status of that. Again, the police telling our Poppy Harlow just moments ago they are searching these buildings to find out if there were any residents inside at the time. We're trying to get more information on that. You can hear the helicopters going overhead right now. Enormous amounts of personnel on the scene. Firefighters working every possible angle here. We have been told a little while ago that the fire was mostly out. I have covered a lot of buildings that have gone down both in this country and others, and I will tell you the remarkable feature of this right now is the smoke. Smoke is simply everywhere around here, and it is very, very thick. We did just get some information from one of our producers who say that investigators have been told by neighbors that they did smell gas prior to the explosion. They did smell gas prior to the explosion, and that would jibe with what we've been hearing right now with the Con Edison crews on the scene and the news that it possibly was some kind of gas leak before. Neighbors were smelling gas. The fire department here in New York is now confirming 16 injuries at the scene. They range from minor to serious, although we are told that none at this point are critical or life-threatening. So 16 injuries ranging from minor to serious, none critical or life-threatening. We will see if that holds. The power of this blast, I will say, if the power of this blast makes it unlikely that there would be some kind of problem. We're being moved here by police. Who am I going to now? Holly Mills. Let's go to Holly Mills on the phone right now. Molly Mills on the phone right now. Molly, what can you tell us?
Well, it seems to have died down from my side, but when I first heard the explosion, it was very loud, and I could feel my building rumble like the subway was going under it. And so I went outside on my terrace, and there was smoke pouring out from the east side.
You said the explosion was very loud. Could you feel it?
Absolutely.
A blast
And
of
I'm
this
way
size
over.
with windows shaking?
No, not like that. But I'm way over on the west side, so but I certainly heard it, and it was very loud. And I could feel it, but it only felt like the subway was going under my building.
So at that point, how long did it take you to find out what was happening, and how long did it take for you to see some of this smoke, which I have to say right now is simply pouring out everywhere where I'm standing right now?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes for it to spread.
Yeah.
And how far away are you from the blast?
I'm over on 8th Avenue, so I'm quite a way away. I just went straight outside to see what was going on, and I could see it coming up on the horizon. And as I watched, it obviously got thicker and blacker, and then the sirens were just going crazy, and the helicopters started coming, and it was just crazy over there.
It is crazy. It's crazy where I'm standing right now. Molly Mills, thank you so much. And I should tell you again, I've been talking about the smoke here. It does span for blocks around the city. And we were told that you could feel the blast all the way across the city. Now, we did just get information that there has been one death from this blast, which is 1 block away from me right now. It was a male of unknown age in the Harlem building collapse. A male of unknown age now has died from this blast, 1644 Park Avenue, that building now gone. Just moments ago, we've been told that there were 16 people injured, ranging from minor to serious, although none critical. Now we do know one person has been killed in this blast. We're going to do some more reporting and tell you everything that's going on this scene right after the break.
Liberty Mutual Insurance. Responsibility. What's your policy?
All right, I'd like to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Jonn Berman. I'm standing about 1.5 blocks away now from what was a large blast. 2 buildings affected in this blast in New York City. One of the buildings, a 5-story building, 1644 Park Avenue, is gone. The NYPD telling CNN 1644 Park Avenue appears not to be there anymore. There has been 1 fatality in this blast that we know of. 1 confirmed death. Earlier we've been told 16 injuries. Not sure if one of those injured had died, but 1 death, more than a dozen injured right now. We're told that neighbors living close to this scene, again, these were two storefronts. One was a piano store, one was a Spanish Christian church. There were apartments on top of these storefronts. We are told that neighbors around these buildings had smelled gas prior to the explosion. There are Con Edison crews on the scene here investigating. We had been told earlier, CNN had Chris Cuomo reporting that Con Edison was saying that they thought at this point it did look like some kind of gas explosion. Bomb squads had been deployed to the scene here, but that had been mostly a precautionary measure. No nexus to terrorism of any kind. A huge law enforcement and first responder situation going on here. 39 fire units, 168 personnel here right now. The smoke momentarily just cleared. One of the striking features had been the amount of smoke that had been passing by here. It was simply covering the area. The other notable feature here, I don't know if you can see it, back near those buildings, train tracks, one of the main rail arteries coming in and out of New York City for the commuter rail. All the trains going to Connecticut and many heading elsewhere in New York go through here. Right now that's shut down, so thousands and thousands of commuters could be affected by this blast. I want to bring in my colleague, Don Lemon, who doesn't live too far from here. Don, what are you seeing?
Hey, I'm actually a half a block away from it. I mean, it's an amazing vantage point that I have here of the building, and I've been talking to workers and people who live in the area who were here when it happened. They are, as a matter of fact, in the building I'm standing in and the one right next door, there are people here inspecting damage. It appears that there's some sort of roof damage here, and they're concerned about a collapse, but that's not an official thing, just the people who are here. Devon Brown works in the area, and he lives in the area. What did you hear, Devon?
I heard two big boom, boom. And thank God that I passed through there. I didn't get hit.
You live very close. You said you were on your way to work. You live right around the corner?
I live right around the corner. I was on my way to work.
People said that they smelled gas. Did you smell any gas or anything?
I didn't smell no gas. Just heard two big boom, boom. And everybody started running crazy outside.
Yeah.
That's it.
And what happened? Did you see them? Mr. Lozano said he saw them taking people away.
Yeah, I see them take at least about 30 people or more and ambulance. Yeah. And I still think there's bodies still underneath them bricks.
Yeah. Well, that's from people who are living in the area here. But we don't know if there are people still underneath the bricks, obviously. But I can say from my vantage point, I can still see members of the fire department, police officers going hand by hand, picking through debris. And also something I've noticed that I think is very important is that Con Edison is here with the electric and gas company, and they are frantically using a jackhammer and pick to try to get to something. I don't know if they're trying to shut off a gas leak, shut off a main valve or something, but they are frantically on this corner of 117th and Park trying to get at something, the electric crews here. And just above them, I can see members of the New York City Police Department, also members of the mass transit, New York City mass transit, on the railroad tracks for Metro North, which is a major commuter artery in this area. They are standing there. They have shut that down completely. I'm not sure. There's also a subway system that is very close to here, the 4, 5, and 6 train, which is the Green Line, which is another major commuter system in New York City. Metro North, of course, runs the Northeast Corridor. But as I'm looking at this building, it's like looking at my next-door neighbor here. I'm standing, and I see smoke still pouring out of this building. I see tower ladder number 13 and a number of other fire crews on this scene going through. And that's the very latest from here, John. I'm going to try to get more information and more eyewitnesses from people who were either at work or in their apartments when it happened.
Okay, Don, thank you so much. Thank you for your view and your vantage point over there. I'm about a block away, not far actually from where Don's standing, and I'm joined by CNN's Poppy Harlow, who's been on the scene for some time now, and also Andrew Padilla. You guys have been walking around here. Just give me a sense of what you've been seeing.
Well, first of all, I got here and immediately met Andrew, who's an independent journalist who lives here in the neighborhood. You live at 118th. I'm at 108.
No,
so
I live up on 108.
108, not far. Obviously, for the first time, the smoke is clearing a bit from what we saw when we arrived here. A lot clearer when we could hardly see a few feet into this block. But, you know, the first thing that Andrew told me was there was a big fire on this exact block a few years ago. Not known what caused it, but you have a bigger issue with what you think is happening here. We don't want to make any assumptions here, but you said, tell me what you said in terms of how these buildings are taken care of.
Well, the way that I got into the work that I'm doing is basically trying to advocate on these issues. Gentrification has been affecting this neighborhood in a big way, and when gentrification occurs, you have landlords that would really prefer to not make the repairs. And on 101 East 116th Street, we were covering a group of residents there on 101 East 116th Street not too long ago who were dealing with a whole bunch of building complaints. There was a fire that affected the rent control apartments, and that situation never ended up getting resolved. And so this idea of there being building complaints, this idea of there being unsafe conditions, these are 100-year-old buildings. So you need to take care of them. And when you don't take care of them, things like this will happen. And it's unfortunate that it takes an explosion like this for CNN and every single other media entity under the sun to finally come to this neighborhood and care.
And we don't know, obviously, what caused this. We know that there was smell of gas that Con Edison came up. We can't make any assumptions right now at all, but we do know that there was a fire on this same block, a big one. You witnessed it just a few years ago.
I didn't witness it, but I was recording some of the tenants.
Right.
The tenants there were advocating on this issue because they were having trouble with their landlord. They were attempting to push them out, and they weren't making the adequate repairs. And so there was a fire that affected some of the rent control apartments on 101 East 116th Street, and that was 2 years ago. And it's clear that...
All right, Andrew, thank you so much. Of course, obviously, we are looking into this right now. What we do know is neighbors were saying they did smell gas prior to this explosion. What we have been reporting now is one person has been killed in this blast, in one building simply not there anymore. We're going to do some more reporting on this. We'll tell you what we find out right after the break.
The Lead with Jake Tapper, today starting at 4 Eastern on CNN.
All right, welcome back at this hour. We're continuing our coverage out of a very serious situation in East Harlem in Manhattan, New York. There has been an explosion that has involved two buildings that we know of at the very least. You're getting a live look here, compliments of News 12 Long Island. We know right now that one building, 1644 Park Avenue, is essentially gone. Chris Cuomo alongside me. We can see a picture now on the left side of your screen of what we're calling multi-use buildings looked like before this explosion that happened shortly after 9. The information we have right now, we do know that it is now a fatality. We know that one man, a man of an undisclosed age, has been killed because of the collapse of this building, and there are several other injuries varying from serious to minor.
Right now, the numbers are very early. It's a complicated situation. We know there are at least a dozen or so. We're saying 16 on the screen there, but it's a very fluid situation. There are over 150 firefighters on the ground, but you have to remember where the buildings used to be, there's now a big pile of debris underneath it. There's an unknown depth of basement, so it's difficult for firefighters to go on it. They're fighting it mainly from above. That's why you see the ladders. The smoke being white, they believe, is a function of it being building materials. The cause, they believe, to be a gas explosion. The NYPD and the firefighters have been very clear to say there's no connection to terror because there were early reports about the bomb squad being there, but it was just precautionary.
We were hearing reports that neighbors telling New York Daily News that they've been smelling gas in the area for several weeks. We do know that Con Ed, who supplies the gas to these residential buildings in this area, did get a call about a possible gas leak or a gas smell. They dispatched a truck, but that truck was en route when the explosion happened. We're going to keep an eye on this situation. We've got reporters on the ground. Jonn Berman, Don Lemon, Poppy Harlow are there. They're gathering information to bring to you, but we also want to go back to our other top story.
Right, we've been following where this missing Malaysian Flight 370 is, and the difficult question right now is it's hard to find something if you don't know where to look, and sadly it appears that Malaysian officials don't know exactly where Flight
That's 1-800-950-6350.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Jonn Berman here, 1 block away from what was a large explosion in East Harlem in New York City on 116th Street between 116th and 117th on Park Avenue. One building at least simply gone, another one badly damaged, perhaps gone also. 2 buildings affected by this blast, 1644 and 1646 Park Avenue. 1 person was killed in the explosion, and we believe more than a dozen injuries at this point. I gave you those street numbers because of some information we did just get in from Con Edison. Con Edison just put out a statement on Twitter saying that report of a gas odor at 1652 Park Avenue came at 9:13 from a resident. 2 Con Edison crews were dispatched at 9:15 and arrived just after the explosion. So let's say that again. At 9:13, Con Edison had reports of a gas odor just a few doors down from where these buildings were. At 1644, that building is now gone. The report of the odor was at 1652. That gives you a sense of what seems to be the cause of these 2 blasts that now killed at least 1 person. The scene here in the area, very smoky. Large numbers of rescue personnel and firefighters on the scene, 168 firefighters right now. They're fighting up on those ladders right now from the sky, trying to get a good vantage point to put those flames out. Right now, it is mostly smoke. CNN producer Rose Arce has been up here as well, covering the scene, walking around this just disaster area. Rose, tell me what you've seen.
I've got 3 days. This is a witness. She fell apart after saying 3 things here.
All right, I think Rose is having a hard time hearing me right now. She, I believe, is not far from where I'm standing. Where I'm standing right now is in a smoke cloud a block away from where this explosion took place. There were 2 buildings affected again. One of them was a piano repair shop on the ground floor. The other on the ground floor was a Spanish Christian church. There were apartments on top of both of these buildings. 1644, the building that we know for sure now was simply gone, was a 5-story apartment building. We'd been told a short while ago that firefighters were still combing through the building looking for people who might be trapped inside. We have no word yet on what they found from inside there. All kinds of personnel on the scene. I should tell you, we did just see a medical examiner truck drive by here. That is the type of truck with the type of personnel that would be looking at bodies, but that could just be precautionary. You would imagine that those personnel would be dispatched to any situation like this. Again, the situation as far as we know it right now, this large explosion taking place this morning around 9:30, not long after Con Edison, the local power company here, had received reports of a gas odor. 1 person dead, more than a dozen injured. We're going to take a break. We'll tell you more from the scene when we come back.
In minimally invasive spine surgery.
Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown. The new season starts April 13th on CNN.
All right, we're back here at this hour. Chris Cuomo alongside myself, Michaela Pereira. We have Jonn Berman in the field on the scene in East Harlem, where a very serious explosion has happened in a residential area, multi-use building. 2 buildings, one of them essentially decimated, the other one no longer there as well. 1644 Park Avenue. We're essentially looking at the area between 116th and 117th on Park Avenue. 1 person has died so far, and the challenge being here, Chris, as we've been talking about, with this collapse of the building, there's a lot of rubble there that the people on scene, those first responders, the firefighters, they can't necessarily get through quickly.
It's difficult. What you're looking at there right now is the elevated railway of Metro North. It's closed with traffic both ways, obviously, because some of the explosion landed on the tracks, but it also makes it difficult to get in there for these big pieces of equipment that are necessary. We do know that there's some 200 firefighters on the scene and all kinds of secondary services to help. They believe at this time it was a gas explosion. They believe that for several reasons. Con Edison, who services the gas here, did have a report of a leak. Surrounding residents said they had smelled gas over the last few days. Con Edison said that they had dispatched workers there just before the explosion this morning, so it does seem as though there was some urgency to the situation. So we'll keep watching it in terms of the numbers of injured and fatalities. One fatality reported so far, but police on the scene say that the numbers are expected to change, so we'll hold off on that.
Back to a story on an international scale that we are watching. We are now 5.
This was a construction.
Join ChristianMingle.com today.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Jonn Berman here, 1 block away from where a few hours ago there was a large explosion in East Harlem, New York. 2 buildings, one simply destroyed, not there anymore. The other one, we don't know the condition of it. The latest 2 confirmed fatalities. That number could change. We're just telling you what we know at this point. 2 confirmed dead, more than a dozen people injured. There had been reports of a gas odor, Con Edison is saying, just before these blasts. I'm joined now by CNN producer Rose Arce, who's been, right next to the scene, standing amid the debris. Rose, give me a sense of what it's like.
Oh, John, it is just heartbreaking. You can see these 2 buildings have just collapsed into a pile of rubble. I mean, you would think that this was a construction zone. There are individual bricks lying there, and there is a swarm of firefighters, I'd say over a dozen firefighters, that keep moving in on top of the pile, pulling out bricks one by one, almost as if they were deconstructing like a pixie stick set. There is a plume of smoke coming out from the center, very, very hot. It appears to be on fire. You can see something sort of golden in the center of it, and 2 hoses up on ladders that are shooting right into the middle. Now, I spoke also with a woman who was leaving the scene of it about a half a block away, absolutely hysterical. She lives on the 2nd floor of the building that has completely collapsed. And she said that her building is residence over a church. This morning at about 9, just after 9 o'clock, she leaves to go to school, says goodbye to her husband, and as she's walking through the building, she says the smell of gas was just overwhelming. Just overwhelming. And she continued to school. She said several people were calling Con Edison, which is the utility company here, and saying something's wrong, something's wrong. She gets, almost to school, and there's been a collapse. Furiously calling her husband, calls her house, calls her cell phone, calls his work, calls the neighbors. Nobody answers. So you can imagine, she is just so terrified of getting bad news. And as I was speaking to her, she was so overcome by the thought of her husband, Jordi Salas is his name, being in the 2nd floor of that building. She just collapsed to the ground.
It's a 5-story building right now. We don't know how many people may have been inside at the time of the blast. We have 2 confirmed fatalities so far, more than a dozen people injured. Give me a sense, if you can, from what you saw there, what those 2 buildings were.
One of them, the neighbors told me, they believed was a piano store. There was some other businesses in there, and they also believe there was some residential above that. The other building is a Hispanic evangelical church. In fact, some of the people that live above it attended the church. It's tiny. It had some, construction, they believe, something going on over the summer. During the summer, they had seen utility trucks and believe that there might have been work on those lines.
In fact, we are getting some permits now CNN has in hand showing that there had been some gas work in the building that has been simply destroyed right now. 2 buildings now decimated. 1 we know for sure simply gone. 2 deaths at this point to report so far. Much more reporting to be done from the scene here, just a block away from this explosion in East Harlem, New York. Legal View with Asheligh Banfield will pick up on this right after the break.
C360, CNN Tonight, 8 Eastern. This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello everyone, I'm Asheligh Banfield with CNN reporting live, and welcome to our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm at the scene of an extraordinary building explosion in East Harlem in New York City, and as you can probably tell from the scene around me, there's not only a little bit of ash in the air, but a tremendous amount of smoke. This has been the scene of at least 2 fatalities, we are told so far, and at least a dozen plus injuries. At this point, the count 17. That count likely to change, though, because there have been unaccounted for people in this catastrophe. All indications at this point leading to a gas explosion that, in the words of at least one official, effectively left a building that was standing in that location no longer standing in that location. The mayor, the newly elected mayor of New York City, is going to be giving a news conference and updating the situation and the facts that we know on hand. Any moment now, Mayor de Blasio is actually on this location as we speak. The pictures you're probably seeing tell the story, if not tell the emotion in this area. The smoke pouring from a building, the effect of that explosion heard and felt for blocks upon blocks. There were reports that even said, there was one witness saying that she could see actual people coming from the buildings, that from one of the local news reports on the scene. And we can tell you right now that the New York City Police Department is confirming that the 2 fatalities are 2 women. We just actually moments ago saw the medical examiner pulling out of the location where we are right now. We are unclear as to whether there was a body in that vehicle or whether that was just an investigative vehicle, but clearly the information is just coming in trickles. Here are some of the things I can tell you right offhand. President Obama has been briefed in Washington on the situation in New York City, northern Manhattan, here in East Harlem. I don't have any other comment on whether the president has said anything about this, but all we know at this point is that the president has been briefed. Another detail I can tell you about the scene, coming close to the scene and the smoke was getting thicker and thicker, there was one moment that was reminiscent of reporting on 9/11. Speakers had been turned outside of a delicatessen, broadcasting one of the local news stations to people who were gathered outside. So many people have fled their buildings and are milling around on the street, wondering what to do next and where to go next. And they were listening intently on all of the news as it was pouring out of the speakers that turned out of the buildings. The FBI and arson squads are on location, even though at this point the officials are saying that there is nothing that's leading them to think this is terror, and all indications leading this to be an incredible gas explosion, mostly because of the sheer concussive force. There are buildings for blocks that lost their windows, blown out into the street. Glass and debris gathered all about the street. The power, just really something to behold. And this entire community feeling and smelling the effects of it, even this long after the effect. And this was an explosion that happened just after 9, close to 9:30. What's remarkable is that a call came in to Con Edison about a report of a gas leak. And CNN has had confirmation that Con Edison dispatched a truck 2 minutes after that call of the smell of gas. And it was only several minutes after that that this intense explosion happened. We are also told that that Con Edison truck responding to the smell of the gas leak did not even get a chance to make it to the scene on time. Perhaps there is one saving grace to the time of this explosion being at 9:30. There is a very good chance that many of the occupants of this 6-story residential building may have actually left the building for work or other locales, but hopefully there weren't as many people in that building as there could have been at the time of that tremendous explosion. The Red Cross is also on the scene. I have personally spoken to a number of residents who've asked me, where can I get a dust mask? Where can I get, and let me just show you, I don't know if you've got an image of me up on camera, but if you could take my shot live right now, this is one of the things that's being handed out to people on the scene. And for those who don't have a scarf or a jacket pulled around their mouths to try to deal with the intense smoke, they're passing these out to a lot of residents. I actually asked one resident where she got her mask, and she said she's a nurse, and she just grabbed it right away. A couple of other things that you should know as well if you're just tuning in. The scene of this location had a Spanish church, a Spanish Christian church, and also a piano store at its base level, and then mostly residential units above that. We have some of the pictures that we're showing to you live are firefighters who are picking through the rubble, undoubtedly for any kind of clues in this investigation that is only in its nascence at this time. We are only a few hours into this. I want to take you to Don Lemon, who's joining me on the telephone, my colleague who's also reporting from the scene. Don, I'm not sure how close you were able to get. I'm at a location at 116th and Madison, and since I haven't been able to check in with you or know where you are, what's your vantage point?
Ashley, I'm right here. I'm at 117 and Park, right? I'm looking dead at it. And I have one of those masks that they have been, NYPD actually handed me a mask. The only reason I'm able to stay here is because I'm at the Community Board 11 Borough of Manhattan office, which is Councilwoman Inez Dixon's office. I just had her here to put her on the phone with you, and she has to run off. She had to run off to that press conference. And she gave me an update. She said when this happened, all of the council people, the speaker, the Office of Emergency Management, everyone was contacted immediately. They said they updated her, and what they said was, I asked her specifically, I said, why are they frantically, Con Edison, which is the power and electric and gas company, why are they frantically trying to get to in this ground here? They're using jackhammers to dig into the ground here and pick. And she said because they told them two things they were concerned about. One, that it was some sort of criminal activity, that's something nefarious, and number two, that it was a gas explosion. At this point, they're leaning towards gas explosion. And she said, so they wanted to take everyone on the block, 2 blocks out, and move everyone out. So the first block, the 1500 block of Park Avenue, they moved everyone out of that block after the explosion. You couldn't stay there if you wanted to. And then the 1600 block, which is where I'm standing on the corner, which is between 117th Street, they started moving people out. They came in, police officers to every building, and said, hey, listen, we have to get you out. You've got to get out of the building. They were waking people up, knocking on their doors, and they also had masks for them. And the only reason that I was able to stay, they recognized me from CNN. The councilwoman pulled me into the community board and started giving me an update on the information. I had a gentleman here earlier, Ashley, who witnessed the emergency personnel taking people away. Mr. Lozano, who owns a tax company just a half a block away from this explosion. He said he had just parked his car right in front of this building, which is a church and a piano company. He said he had just parked his car there, walked to his building, put the key in the door. As soon as he put the key in the door, the explosion happened. He opened his door, fell into his building, and he said debris started flying everywhere. People started screaming, and they started rushing around. What he said is that he heard 2 explosions. Now, I don't know if that was the first explosion and then he heard a reverberation, or if it was indeed 2 explosions. And he said he immediately fell to the ground and then got back up and looked out of the door, and then he said he saw people rushing in to try to help. And then he said almost immediately there were emergency personnel on the scene. So right now, because I think I'm a lot closer to you, I'm just going to explain to you what I see as I stand here on the corner of 117th Street and Park Avenue. I see a number of different fire trucks. I see people on that Metro North train track, which is a huge commuter rail system in this area. I also see people on the other side of Park Avenue, which is a huge avenue. It's a double avenue here. You've got a big median down the middle, and the train track runs down the middle. There are people from the NYPD standing on top of those buildings, and there are people from the fire department also standing on top of those buildings. People on the railroad track. And then there are 2 hook and ladder trucks that are very near the scene, and there are members of the fire. There's a backhoe that is pulling the debris, the bricks, out of the building or away from the building, and there are firefighters with their hands removing bricks, and I would imagine they're digging through that rubble and they're looking for people, Ashley. And again, the smoke still pouring out of that building.
All right, Don Lemon reporting for us live. Get back to us with further details if you could. As Don has been reporting, I can even see the wafts of smoke and ash coming by us. It is thicker than it was when I first got here. It is getting hard for a lot of the people who are outside, a lot of these residents that have been pouring out of their buildings. Mayor de Blasio is here on location, getting ready to give a live news conference, and we're going to have our live cameras trained on his most recent update with the latest facts and information out of this. But as we know it now, if you're just joining us, 2 people dead, 2 women according to the NYPD. At least a dozen more are injured. The last count was 17 people injured. The injuries, we are told, many of them minor, but we don't have a full picture yet, and it is unclear as to whether they have been able to account for everybody who's either been hurt or, God forbid, killed in this very intense explosion, a gas explosion in East Harlem. We're going to take a quick break here on CNN, and we'll be right back.
But police say minutes later.
Again, welcome. This is Asheligh Banfield reporting live in East Harlem in New York City. Welcome to our viewers in America and right around the world as we continue to update this breaking news in Manhattan. We are awaiting a live news conference from the new mayor of New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio, who himself has come to this location. It is thick with smoke. It is still blowing ash in the neighborhood, and we are told he is getting ready to update the most current information. At this point, we know 2 people dead, both of them women. We also know there are 17 injured, which was our last count to our Poppy Harlow, as the NYPD had told her, 17 injured, and still the search goes on for those who may be unaccounted for. Andy Peralta lives within a half a block and watched the actual explosion happen. Your windows were blown out and you could see bricks blowing?
Yes. And what? It looked like when they came over, like first you feel like when the explosion came, like the heat from the explosion.
Yeah,
something hit, like something hit me when the explosion came over.
Let me explain. There's a Con Edison truck that's passing between us and into the scene right now, and Con Edison has been on location. All indications for those just joining us are this was a massive gas explosion. Con Edison responsible for that, so clearly that is not an unusual sight.
And when the explosion came over, like I get shocked. Like I called 911. I see brick flying away.
Did you leave your apartment right away?
I leave my apartment.
Right away.
Yes, and I leave in underwear when I realized when my people told me that I was in underwear.
You left your apartment not even dressed.
Not even dressed. When I went,
it was that surprise.
It was a surprise because I get like shocked. I would think it was a terrorist attack because you didn't expect anything happen around here.
And how many of your neighbors were doing the same thing?
Everybody from my neighbor went the first thing downstairs when they told me they look up.
Andy, good luck. I hope everything is okay where you live and that you get your building repaired and that your neighbors are, for the most part, going to be okay. But I'm sorry about what's happened here.
Okay, thank you.
Andy was joining us live. We also met Julian and Mike, and they were just literally next to where I am in a laundromat. You've even got your laundry. Tell me what happened when that explosion hit.
I mean, honestly, the pressure in my ears was so much that I remember, like, I fell onto my laundry cart. My cart is broken, and then the ceiling tiles started to fall down. The back wall was lined with mirrors. The mirrors started to shatter and fall down, like the sheets of the mirrors. And so there were only a few of us in there, and we all started to run toward the door.
But there was an elderly lady who did not.
She was worried about her stuff. She didn't want anyone to take her laundry, I guess. But
and what did you do?
I mean, I told her, I was like, no, we have to go. We don't know what happened. We need to get out of here. And I just made her get out of the laundry.
You just physically geared her towards the door.
Yeah, I kind of like steered her. I didn't push her.
Yeah. And just quickly, Mike, I know that you are your friends. You were just a few blocks away as well in your apartment.
I was in the apartment and I heard the explosion. That's when I called her and she told me that the ceiling of the laundromat has fallen on her. So that's when I got dressed and just ran out.
And that far away, you felt that concussion as well?
Oh yeah, it was deafening. Very loud.
Sorry for both of you, and the best of luck. I met them on the street. They're out on the street as hundreds and hundreds of people are, many of them wondering what are they going to do. And in just a little bit on this program, you're going to meet a family with 2 babies. Absolutely unclear as to where they're going to be tonight. Many of them wondering who's going to help us. How are we going to get back into our building with 2 small children? We're waiting for the mayor to update us on all of this, not only what's going to happen to the residents who are so displaced, what the latest count is on those dead and injured, and just exactly what happened in East Harlem, in northern Manhattan, that caused such calamity and such a frightening scene in a city that is very, very attuned to things like this when they happen. We're back right after this, live on CNN.
In sale, you're gonna love us. Geneseo, Princeton, Moline, Davenport, and now in Galesburg.
Melissa Mark Viverito, who represents this district in the City Council. With us are other key leaders of our response who will join in for the Q&A. Commissioner Bill Bratton and Chief Bill Banks of the NYPD, Joe Bruno of OEM, Tom Ferriello, the Acting Buildings Commissioner. Also would like to welcome John McAvoy, the President and CEO of Con Ed, who is with us. And thank Councilmember Inez Dickens for being here. And we have a representative of Congressman Rangel's office as well. So today, at approximately 9:30 a.m., there was a major explosion that destroyed 2 buildings. Explosion was based on a gas leak. The impact affected buildings around the 2 that were destroyed. Very heavy impact on the surrounding buildings. A heavy fire has ensued as well. Fire is now up to a 5-alarm level of response, and FDNY is continuing its efforts to contain the fire, and then in the coming hours to finally put the fire out. There was no warning. Now, I'd like to emphasize everything I'm telling you is based on preliminary information. This is the best information we have at this moment. It is by definition preliminary. But from what we know now, the only indication of danger came about 15 minutes earlier when a gas leak was reported to Con Edison. Con Ed dispatched a team immediately to respond. The explosion occurred before that team could arrive. As soon as the explosion was called in, FDNY responded literally within 2 minutes of the call for help. FDNY is now again in the process of putting out the fire. Con Ed is in the process of shutting down all gas mains going into this building, but that is a detailed and complicated process that requires digging up the ground and a lot of manual labor to turn off all the different supplies of gas to the building. This is a tragedy of the worst kind because there was no indication in time to save people. We know we've lost 2 people already. We know at this moment preliminarily that 18 are injured, different levels of injury. We also know that there will be a search through the rubble of the building as soon as the fire is put out, looking for those who are missing. There are a number of missing individuals. I emphasize that those who are missing could well be safe in another location and just not contacted yet or reachable yet. But there are a number of missing individuals, and there's going to be a thorough search to try and find or locate each individual. This is going to be an extended operation. This will take quite a bit of time to fully address this issue. To achieve that, we have on the scene 250 firefighters and dozens of pieces of equipment, including heavy equipment, necessary to deal with the rubble from the building. I want to say that once again we have been shown what our first responders are capable of doing under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. All of the agencies that responded, led by the FDNY, immediately secured the situation in the surrounding buildings, checked the surrounding buildings, made sure that everyone in those buildings was safe, made sure the fire was not spreading to other buildings, Extraordinary, fast, precise response by our first responders. I want to thank the police, OEM, everyone who's been a part of this operation already. We have a lot of people in this community right now, deeply concerned. A lot of people who've been negatively affected in their buildings surrounding, a lot of people from the buildings, the two that collapsed, wondering where their loved ones are. Speaker Mark Viverito has been talking to a number of families. I've spoken to the pastor of the church that was one of the storefronts in these buildings. There's a tremendous amount of anxiety, but suffice it to say that every effort is being expended to locate each and every one of these individuals. Finally, for any relatives who are looking for information about their loved ones, a special hotline will be set up shortly, but for now they can call 311. So for relatives, family members looking for information about loved ones who might have been in either of these buildings, they can call 311. With that, let me bring forward Fire Commissioner Sal Cassano to give you more details of the situation and the response.
Just to reiterate a little bit what the mayor said, the call originally came in at 9:31, and we had our first unit on the scene at 9:33. They were faced with a very heavy fire condition. 2 buildings collapsed, debris covering the sidewalk and a couple of vehicles in the street. So they quickly transmitted an alarm for a major collapse response. And we now have over 250 firefighters, dozens of pieces of equipment, dozens of pieces of special equipment with our Special Operations Command. We have backhoes on the scene, but we know we're going to need some cranes, which we have coming on the way. The plan right now is to extinguish the fire. We're doing surface removal at the present time. We have to clean the sidewalk of the debris and the brick to make sure that there was nobody on the sidewalk or the street. And then once the fire is under control and extinguished, we will start to do some surface removal, some debris removal. We have to be very careful. The building is in a very precarious position. We want to make sure that everybody that's in there as first responders is safe. It's been a great interagency response between OEM, police, fire, buildings, but it's going to be a long, extended operation, and we want to make sure that we can get through that debris as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'd like to call forward Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As has been indicated, I represent this district. My district office is literally half a block from the explosion site. I live 5 blocks from here. I was headed to City Hall when I heard about what happened and quickly turned around to be here. And obviously it's an extremely anxious time for the constituents that live here, for the families that have been impacted. But I want to praise and give thanks to the first responders, not only the FDNY, the NYPD, and all agencies that have responded. The level of professionalism clearly is not to be questioned, and it's been incredibly quick response. We have made our district office a command post for the first responders. We're interacting with some of the impacted families, trying to ensure that they get all the proper support possible. So I really want to thank everyone that has helped to this point. We're going to be as collaborative as possible with all of the agencies. Obviously, there are people that are still unaccounted for, and that is of concern. But we also have to think about people that have been displaced.
So the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, updating the situation live on location. And I just want to tell you, over the course of his ad hoc news conference, the air has somewhat cleared. I'll be honest with you. The smoke seems to be clearing. It is not nearly as choking as it was before. Pretty much everyone who was around me has been wearing some kind of a mask or a covering over their mouths, and that seems to be abating somewhat. From my vantage point, I can't tell you that that's because this fire is under control or out, but I can tell you the smoke situation definitely has changed. The wind may have completely changed as well. As one of the emergency crews backs out from behind me, the highlight of Mayor de Blasio's news conference was that there are 250 NYPD firefighters on location Not only that, but the number of missing, still unknown, but that there are those who are missing and that this is going to be a thorough search as it continues through the rubble of this collapsed building right now. But clearly the concern now for those missing and the 2 who are confirmed dead. We are back right after this, live on CNN.
Richard Quest, thank you very much for helping us along on this. Obviously, it becomes easier as we get more information. The trick is doing it when you don't know that much. We're going to leave this part of the story now. I'd like to get back to New York City and the explosion there. Asheligh Banfield is on the ground monitoring the situation. The smoke seems back behind you, Asheligh.
Is, Chris. You know, just before I toss to you, things seem to be clearing here, but I think it's a factor of shifting winds. But I'll say this as well. Just a short time ago, large plumes of smoke began to rise yet again from one of the adjacent buildings. It appeared, and when we asked around, we were hearing a possible report that there might be another building collapse. We don't have that confirmed, but I can tell you a contingent of New York City firefighters marched by us, and they were laden down with all sorts of gear. It looked like it could have been pry hooks, could have been also plaster hooks and pry bars. I'm not sure. It was a little hard to tell. They were moving at a fair clip. There isn't a sense of anxiety, I'll say that. There's just a sense of bewilderment from the many, many people who are displaced. You heard the Mayor Bill de Blasio, saying there are a number of missing, still unaccounted for. He doesn't want to amp that up, though, because it could just be some of the hundreds and hundreds of people who all fled these buildings and are now wondering what they're going to do, especially with tonight. Ronique Benjamin is one of the men that I met on the street just a little bit earlier on. Ronique, you were standing with your wife and your 2 babies, and effectively you've been out on the street since the blast. Tell me what happened when the blast went off.
Pretty much me and my little girl was in the room, and we just heard this impact, and it sounded like a bomb or something went off. And it kind of shook us. It literally, you felt the ground shake. And I ran to go see my wife and the other people in the apartment, how they were doing, and they thought it was a TV that fell, but it actually felt like a truck or something just hit the building, and we heard glass and everything.
And when I met you, you had the babies were bundled up, and you were just sitting on the corner wondering what's next. Do you have any idea what you're going to do? You know where you're going to sleep tonight?
Actually, we don't. You know, we live right in the next building, so pretty much either we're going to have to go to another family house or something like that. But we're just waiting to see,
But so far, there's no coordination. No one has reached out to you or the Red Cross or anyone to say, here's what we're doing for those who are displaced at this early stage.
Absolutely not.
Well, listen, I wish you good luck, and the babies, they all seem to be handling this pretty carefully and quietly, but best of luck to you, because the temperature's really dropping, so I hope you can find somewhere tonight, and thank you for staying by to talk to us. Ronique Benjamin, one of the residents who was just adjacent. By the way, I can't tell you about that adjacent building because it is directly behind me, behind those ladders, but the plumes of smoke were very thick, and as Chris just mentioned, the plumes got much thicker. I just want to reiterate that Mayor de Blasio says the search is going to be extremely thorough. We did see a second medical examiner's truck. It's this one that had just come back in and is now backing out again. What I can't confirm for you is whether there's anyone in that medical examiner's truck. So far, the count, even at Mayor Bill de Blasio's news conference, is 2 dead, and I believe the number at this point is 18 injured in this 5-alarm blast. 18 injured, and of course, many unaccounted for at this time. But again, let me just reiterate, there may be many unaccounted for because there are hundreds of people out on the street, some wondering what happened, some returning from work because they live here. I can't tell you the number of residents who've asked police, I need to get in there. Some have been allowed to go in to get their dogs out. We saw a reunion with the dog, but effectively there's just a lot of confusion at this point until they figure out just exactly where all these people are going to go and how this happened and exactly how many people will remain on the missing or will remain able to be reunited. And 19 injured. I'm reporting live here in northern Manhattan in East Harlem. We'll continue to follow this story here on CNN. I'm Asheligh Banfield. My colleague Wolf Blitzer starts right now.
Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer reporting from Washington. We're watching 2 major stories. One, a deadly explosion in New York City that's caused 2 buildings to collapse. We'll have a live report from the scene in a few moments. Stand by for that. We're also now in the 5th day since a Malaysia Airlines plane simply vanished without a trace. There are still more questions than answers about the plane's mysterious disappearance. Here's what we know right now. Malaysian officials have expanded the search area. It now covers 27,000 square
and nutrition? Easy. It's EB, Eggland's best. Better eggs. It's EB.
Get back to the mystery surrounding the disappearance of that Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 in just a few moments. There are developments unfolding right now, but there's another major story we're following right now in New York City. Emergency crews, they are on the scene of a horrific explosion in New York. It's caused 2 buildings to collapse and severely damaged several surrounding buildings. At least 2 people are confirmed dead. 18 others are injured. The blast happened nearly 4 hours ago in East Harlem. Set off a 5-alarm fire that is still burning. A Con Edison official tells CNN there was a report of a possible gas leak about 15 minutes before the explosion, and investigators smelled gas in the air. Law enforcement officials stressed to CNN they are seeing no connection. Not seeing any connection to terrorism. Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York held a news conference just a few moments ago. Here's what he had to say about the operation that's underway right now.
We know we've lost 2 people already. We know at this moment preliminarily that 18 are injured, different levels of injury. We also know that there will be a search through the rubble of the building as soon as the fire is put out, looking for those who are missing. There are a number of missing individuals. I emphasize that those who are missing could well be safe in another location.
Let's go to the scene right now. Don Lemon is joining us. He's there. Don, you know this area well. You don't live all that far away. I know you live in Harlem. First of all, tell our viewers, a lot of people know New York, where exactly these buildings are located.
They're located between 116, hang on, Wolf, sorry. I had a mask on my face. They're handing out masks to everyone in the neighborhood. This building is between 116th and 117th Street on Park Avenue, which is a major artery right in East Harlem. Some people call it Spanish Harlem. Well, this is East Harlem, and this is a heavily trafficked area. It's right next to the Metro North train station. All those Metro North trains have been stopped. But let me just give you some color from the scene because I believe I have the best vantage point here. And it's too bad that I don't have a camera with me. I managed to get inside the police line before they closed it off, and I went into the community board office with the councilwoman, and she allowed me to stay in. So I'm looking from just a few hundred feet away, not that far. I am seeing firefighters with buckets, sort of in a chain kind of way. You know, they hand the bucket, they pick up the debris up with their hand, they put it in the bucket, and they hand it to the fireman behind him, then he hands it to the fireman behind him, and they make a new pile from that debris. There were cars that were parked right out in front of this building, Wolf, and what they did, the NYPD came in with their tow trucks, the NYPD tow trucks, and they removed about 4 of those cars so they can make more room for the piles of rubble and also for the medical examiner. And I do have to say this, again, this is confirmed from my eyes. I don't know if this is an additional death or an additional body, but just about 10 minutes ago, I saw a body being put on a gurney and being put inside the medical examiner's truck. I don't know if it's one of the 2 who are dead, or I don't know if it's an additional body. But the medical examiner has set up, of course, the medical examiner truck, and I'm looking at movement now. All of a sudden, hang on, the firefighters are moving in. It appears they have cleared an area, Wolf, and they have a number of them have moved closer to the area, and I don't know what that means. But I haven't seen them do that since I've been standing here for the past 2 hours. But anyway, the medical examiner set up a truck on the sidewalk with a black tent over it, and that's where they're bringing the bodies if they do find bodies inside of this rubble. The smoke, the fire is still going. It dissipates for a bit, and then it builds back up. And then there's still 2 hoses that they are, at least that I can see from here, that they are spraying on the fire and the smoldering. I imagine there are hot spots inside of there. But I am noticing now that the firefighters are standing on top of this huge rubble pile, Wolf, and they're taking these buckets and they're moving them back and forth. And I guess when they find their way or they make room, they move in a little bit closer to the area. And I don't know when they move in like that if that means that they have found another body or something that's interesting, if they have heard something. But since I have been standing here, I've not seen them move in with such force. And again, the wind keeps changing. Everyone who's in the area, all the emergency people, the firefighters, the police department, members of the medical examiner's office, the Con Edison, which is a gas and electric company, everyone here has on one of those facial masks. And you can smell, I'm smelling gas. The smell of gas is getting heavier and heavier and heavier in the air, and that concerns me because we are standing not far from where Con Edison, I would imagine, is trying to turn off some sort of a gas main or get to the gas main. But all of a sudden, the smell of natural gas or whatever the agents they put into it so that it smells, it's become really heavy in the air here, Wolf. And that's the latest from the scene that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, that sounds ominous to me, Don. You may want to start moving away from that area because in the initial explosion, people smelled gas about 15 minutes before the explosion, and then all of a sudden there was this explosion. These 2 buildings and the surrounding buildings, these are old buildings, right, built before World War II. Were they residential, office? What kind of buildings were they?
It's mixed use. So here's the thing. As you and I, we've discussed this, Harlem is in the middle of what they call regentrification. It's in a renaissance. And so nothing is cheap in Harlem anymore. It's if you're on the east end of Harlem, where this is the new Upper East Side. They call it the Upper East Side. If you're on the west side where I am, it's the new Upper West Side. And so it's mixed use. There are a number of tenement buildings that were built probably pre-war. I'm looking at the building on the corner that's next to this building, and that's a brand new building. It had to have been built within the last 3 or 4 years. And the community center that I'm standing in is probably a building that was built back in the 20s, maybe the 30s. And so they believe that this was there was a residential area on top of this building. There was a piano store. And then there's also, that smell of gas is really strong.
Don, let me recommend if you may want to get away from that area.
Well, they're not moving anyone out, Wolf.
Well, maybe they should.
Yeah, maybe they should, but if they start to move, I'll let you know. But there's also a church, and then a piano store, and then now all of a sudden, I'm not sure which pictures. I don't have access to CNN, so I can't see it. But now the smoke is really, really heavy over this building. And I don't know if that's from a change of wind or if the hot spot, one of the hot spots, has all of a sudden restarted here. And now I'm seeing more police officers. And this is NYPD tactical unit also coming on the scene, and they are going door to door now to talk to people. Wolf, that's the latest.
Are they wearing gas masks?
No, no one is wearing a gas mask. Every once in a while, listen, there's a smell of gas that happens. That has been, this faint smell that has been here since this morning. And I would imagine the people who live here, that's what they smell this morning. But it gets stronger, occasionally. And I don't know if it's from a change of winds, but I mean, what I just smelled now, I had smelled in the last 2 hours since I've been here. It is really strong. But no one seems to be put off by it. Some of the electrical workers are not running or moving anybody back. They're just sort of taking it in stride. So I would imagine that they have it under control. But if you're looking at live pictures of that scene now, I mean, I'm standing really close to the scene, and I can barely see the firefighters from my vantage point because of the smoke and the haze. And just to sort of give you an idea of what I'm looking at, I'm standing right just on the north end of 117th Street, and where this building is collapsed is just on the sort of south of 117th Street. And so I'm looking uphill, and if you're on the other side of 116th, you probably can't see what I can see because you're looking uphill and you can't see the firefighters. We're dead on to the firefighters. They're standing on this debris, and I'm looking as if I'm standing, on my front porch looking at my neighbor's house. And what I can tell you, what I'm seeing right now is that they're taking those buckets and they're putting debris in them. They're also taking, I've seen like big chunks of 2x4, and I've seen metal rods, and they were taking them and handing them and throwing them back. And the pile of debris that they're standing on now is the man-made pile that they pulled from the building. So they went into the building, removed the debris, and then build another pile, and then they stand on that pile, and then they go to and then they dig, and then they build another pile behind them, and then they dig, and they build another pile that they find behind them, and they just keep gingerly going into it, like just, a little bit at a time. And they're using their hands, they're using picks, and I've seen them use shovels, and there's also a backhoe that they have been using as well. And I'm also keeping a close eye, Wolf, on the medical examiner's office because I'm seeing gurneys as well, but I've only seen one body that they have put into that medical examiner's van. Wolf?
All right, Don, stand by. I'm going to get back to you. I want you to, if you have a chance, ask some of the firefighters, the other authorities there, what's going on, that intense gas smell that you clearly are smelling right now. How worried should we be? We'll get back to you, Don, momentarily. Don't go too far away, but if that gas continues to escalate, that smell, you may want to get a little bit further away. We'll check back with Don Lemon in a few moments on this explosion. 2 buildings collapsed in New York City. Also, we'll update you on the search area for Flight 370. It doubles in size. Malaysia now asking for outside help. Experts are needed to pinpoint where to even look. We have new information right after this.
Tomorrow, starting at 6 Eastern on CNN.
A frantic search is now underway in the rubble of two collapsed buildings in New York City. They came crashing down after a huge blast, possibly a natural gas explosion at around 9:30 this morning. At least 2 people are confirmed dead. 24 others are injured, including a child reportedly now in critical condition. The blast set off a 5-alarm fire that's still burning right now. A Con Edison official tells CNN there was a report of a possible gas leak about 15 minutes before the explosion. Investigators smelled gas in the air. Law enforcement officials stressed to CNN they are not seeing any connection to terrorism. Our own Poppy Harlow is on the scene for us in Harlem in New York City. Poppy, what's the latest? What are you learning?
Well, Wolf, just take a look behind me. We're going to pan in so you can see what dozens and dozens of FDNY first responders, New York City Police Department, digging through the rubble of what was 2 buildings here, 2 residential apartments, 1644 and 1646 Park Avenue. As you said, 24 injured and being treated at this time. We know 2 are dead, 2 women. Mayor de Blasio calling this a tragedy of the worst kind because of the lack of advance notice. Again, the only notice that they were given was that call of someone in the area smelling gas just about 15 minutes prior to this explosion. Also, I want to tell you that an NYPD detective told me, quote, 1644 Park Avenue appears not to be there anymore. A total collapse of these buildings. An extended operation underway. This is very much a search and recovery effort still at this time, Wolf. They have literally just been putting out the final flames from this fire, now searching through all the rubble. We got here just about half an hour after it happened, 45 minutes or so, and talked to people who lived in buildings right on the block that were impacted by this. Listen to what one 21-year-old Angelica told me.
My neighbors came banging on my door telling me to get out, that I guess they was evacuating the building, and I couldn't get out. My door was jammed. Everything off my windowsill fell, and I guess the impact of the explosion jammed the door as well.
And now, you know, we also met people here this morning looking for their loved ones, running up, embracing others, very worried about what would have happened. I think the big question at this time, and the mayor said time and time again in the press conference, he will not name the number of people unaccounted for. It is just far too early to do that. They could well be alive, not injured, just not being reached or not found by their friends and family. They're not giving us that number. That is the key question now. How many people are unaccounted for? Are there any more fatalities? And also the structural integrity of the buildings on this block, Wolf. The mayor said that there was a huge impact structurally. The question is, are these buildings intact, or is there concern going forward about the structural integrity of the buildings connected on the block? We've reached out to the Department of Buildings. We're waiting to hear back from them on that.
Yeah, 2 buildings collapsed in New York City, huge explosions. We'll stay on top of this story. Thanks very much, Poppy, for that. Other news we're following, including Republicans, they score a major win in a Florida special election. So what does that signal for President Obama and the Democrats in the upcoming November elections? Not good news. Our chief political analyst, Gloria Borger, standing by. You got us a lot worried. Been watching the breaking news out of New York City. Very disturbing news. Occurred around 9:30 a.m. Eastern. An explosion leveling 2 buildings in Manhattan. Don Lemon is on the scene for us in Harlem. Don, you got us a lot worried a little while ago when you said that smoke, the gas smoke, seemed to be accelerating, getting worse. What's the latest?
They appear to have taken care of it, and I will have to say that I'm reporting from inside police lines. The police are aware that I'm here now, and they're allowing me to stay since I'm already here. I've spoken to a couple of them, and they said, since you're here, stay. Make sure you wear your mask and just stay out of everyone's way. So I'm actually standing, Wolf, right in front of the Con Ed people who have gotten down into that hole, and I guess they capped off whatever they need to cap off. When I spoke to you, it was probably an opportune time that we were speaking, because I would imagine that they had just gotten to the main or what have you that they needed to reach in order to shut it down, and they have done it. I don't smell anymore. This video that I shot now that you're looking at, Wolf, is from my iPhone. As I was standing here, there was a drone that was flying over the scene. It flew over the scene for several minutes, about 10, 15 minutes, back and forth. And I'm not sure if it's from the NYPD. I'm being told that from these system officers, it's not from Brad, that it is for the NYPD. But as we know, there are people who do have personal drones. But this one did look official to me. So drone flying over the scene, probably taking some video and keeping officials informed as to what's going on.
Don, I want you to stand by because Brooke Baldwin is in New York as well. She's going to pick up our coverage right now.
Here we go, top of the hour. Thank you so much for being with me on this Wednesday. I'm Brooke Baldwin. Busy news day here as we're following two major stories this afternoon. First, right here in New York City, look at these pictures. Incredible amounts of smoke. Deadly scene there in Harlem as fire crews, New York Police Department's bomb squad have been working this 5-alarm fire after an explosion, and two buildings, not just one, two here, collapsed in East Harlem. The latest numbers we have here, 2 dead, 24 others hurt. We have heard from New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio speaking to reporters just a little while ago, saying several people are also missing, but he will not, of course, speculate on that possible number. The blast happened right around 9:30 this morning. The local utility company says it was called out to the location for a possible gas leak, but the explosion happened before its trucks arrived.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Let's get straight to our breaking news, though. New development in the away.
Find out why more than 2 million members count on Angie's List. Angie's List. Reviews you can trust.
All right, let's get right to the other big story today, this deadly explosion and buildings collapsing in New York City. This is what we know at this hour. At least 2 people are dead, 24 injured, and many unaccounted for. You see the pictures. I mean, they really tell the story here post-explosion, the massive amounts of smoke plumes into the East Harlem air. At least 2 buildings, as I mentioned, destroyed. And all of this happened right around 9:30 this morning in Manhattan's East Harlem neighborhood. This is at 116th and 16th Street and Park Avenue. It's a 5-story building with stores, apartments, just gone. Neighbors reported smelling gas earlier this morning before that explosion. People several streets away say they heard and felt the blast as well.
Boom! It's like a heavy thunder.
Just a big clap, big explosion, like a thunder, very heavy thunder.
Dozens of people, as you can imagine, who live in this area forced to get out of their homes. One woman told our correspondent there, Poppy Harlow, the explosion jammed her apartment door shut.
I heard a big explosion. I didn't know what was going on, so I decided to look out my window. It's a building complex, so you could see the other side of the building. It started going into smoke. My neighbors came banging on my door telling me to get out, that I guess they was evacuating the building. And I couldn't get out. My door was jammed. Everything off my windowsill fell, and I guess the impact of the explosion jammed the door as well.
I mean, just looking at the two of them, you can't even see past them because of the smoke there this morning. We know that the city's mayor, Bill de Blasio, he is there on the scene. We have also learned that President Obama has been briefed on the situation by Homeland Security. CNN has live team coverage of this massive explosion there. So on the phone with me right now, my colleague, Don Lemon. Don, I know you're at 117th and Park. You've been there for a couple of hours now. Set the scene for me right here.
I'm looking at, Brooke, piles and piles of rubble in the middle of Park Avenue. which is just that I've never seen anything like it. And I'm looking at dozens and dozens of firefighters on the scene. Now, earlier, just before you came to me, those firefighters, Brooke, were digging through that rubble. And they're not doing it anymore. And I'm not exactly sure why they're not digging through. I don't know if that means they feel that they have found everyone who's in there, or if it's a shift change, or if it's just too dangerous for them to go any further. But that's what I'm looking at now. I'm looking at some firefighters who are moving away from the scene. I'm looking at some firefighters who are just sort of sitting and resting against the train trestle here, the track, which carry the Metro North to and fro. And I am also looking at a hook and ladder truck spraying these two buildings, the hot spots and the fire that is still going. It's about 9:30 this morning. Just about, I guess, 30, 45 minutes ago, there was a very, very strong smell of natural gas in the air. And Con Edison, the electric and gas company, their workers were working frantically with a jackhammer and with picks trying to get down into this hole. I'm standing right on the corner and just really a couple of yards away from that building, and I can see a big hole that has been dug by Con Edison that had, about 20 people in that hole, so I guess trying to shut that main off. And I guess a couple minutes ago, they managed to shut it off, and now everyone has sort of moved away from that hole. And just a short time ago, I saw a body being put into the medical examiner's van. I don't know if that is in addition to the two people who have died, according to the mayor's office, or if it's part of that. And we haven't heard any change in numbers, so I'd imagine that is part of that. And I also saw a drone flying over. Some people here in the neighborhood, residents, are saying, well, this is just people who are filming it. Residents who are filming it, and some members of the police department are saying, no, that's one of our drones, and they're getting information. So there's a lot going on here. Everyone has been evacuated from that block and then also from the block that I'm in. And the only reason I was able to stay is because as I was being evacuated from a business, there was the councilwoman walked over and said, hey, how are you? And I recognized her, and she brought me into the council office. And now I've managed to stay inside the police perimeter to report from inside the scene. This is as close as I think anyone has been able to get from.
It's a pretty grim description of what you have seen so far. Don Lemon, stay close to your phone here as you can help just keep us posted as far as how the scene is evolving there. As we mentioned, they're looking for people. There are people unaccounted for. One woman, thank goodness she's okay. She lives in a building nearby, and she felt this thing this morning. She said it felt like an earthquake. She is Aisha Watts. She had just gotten home from taking her kids to school, and she's on the phone with me. Aisha, I have to say, sitting here in New York City as well, a lot of people watching these pictures just couldn't help but harken back with the smoke and the explosion to 9/11.
Right, that's how I felt.
Yes. How are you this afternoon, just a couple hours removed?
I am still shooken up because the building that was collapsed was 1648. I live in 1652, and that's connected to 1648. Even though it's two entrances, but it's still connected together.
So you are
as of
that close.
9:31 this morning, I was about to take a shower, get ready for work since I dropped the kids off already. It was beyond a big boom, beyond thunder. I thought it was a derailment for the Metro North, since we live right there on Park Avenue, derailment. I thought the train fell off the track. I thought it was a terror attack. I didn't know what to think. The toilet was shaking. Everything was shaking. I got up. I heard the windows came tumbling inside. It came in. I had no window frames. I had no walls. The walls came tumbling down. I had nothing.
What did you do next? I understand that your apartment door was stuck. How'd you get out?
Yeah, my apartment door was stuck. I tried to get out, so I just ran back to try to get a knife to carve myself out or something, unlock myself, but that didn't work. I was banging on the door, on my apartment door, for somebody to come and rescue me and help, as my next door neighbor did.
So your neighbor came to your rescue. Are you back in your apartment? Are you thank God is right. You're not back in your apartment, are you?
No, we can't go back for the next couple of days because the building was connected to that collapsed.
Tell me, Aisha, about the building, or I guess it's buildings that collapsed. Were they, do you know if they were full of residents.
That was a very old building. I'm 37, about to be 38. That was beyond my time. That was when my grandmother came from South Carolina. She was born 1920. She came up around 30. That was before then. That building was pretty old. There's always problems in that building because we have a backyard to my building, 1652, and we can see them playing. You know, it's connected. We all together.
No more problems for the building. The building is gone.
Yes.
I understand it was a pre-World War II building there in
it really
East Harlem.
was.
Whew, Aisha Watts, I'm glad you are A-OK and that your kids weren't home to experience what you experienced this morning. No walls, no windows in your apartment. Thank you so much for calling in. We're going to get back to that story here in just a minute, but 5 days we're
The Lead with Jake Tapper, today starting at 4 Eastern on CNN.
All right, let's get back to the breaking news out of East Harlem in New York, where at least 2 people are dead and more than 24 others are injured after these 2 buildings collapsed in this explosion this morning, believed to be from a gas leak. Look at this smoke here. Unbelievable this morning. The buildings collapsed. This is near the corner of Park Avenue and 116th Street, sending smoke billowing into the air, blast blowing out so many people's windows in this neighborhood. It was a 5-alarm fire. People had reported the smell of gas about a couple of minutes before this morning's blast. And so this is what the 2 buildings, just for perspective's sake, this is what the buildings looked like before this explosion. In fact, one of them to your left housed a church, the other on your right, piano repair shop, and now you'll see what's left when we go live to Poppy Harlow, who is there. And Poppy, we know as we're learning the numbers of folks who are injured, there are also those who are unaccounted for.
Right, that is the big question at this hour. 2 dead, 24 injured, and an unknown number still unaccounted for. That coming from the mayor of New York City. The 2 people with me, thank you guys for being here. We have Jose Perez and Liz Robinson. Your godmother, and she's your aunt, is missing. She lived on the 2nd floor of 1644, one of the buildings that collapsed. To you first, what have you been doing to try to find her? I know you've been calling her cell phone nonstop. It's going right to voicemail.
Yes. When we were informed this morning, my sister saw it on the news while I was at work. She immediately texted us that was our aunt's building. My other sister started calling all of the local hospitals. We came to the scene, went directly to the Red Cross, who informed us that the local councilwoman's office would have updated information of any individuals that were taken to hospitals, and she's still not on any of those lists.
I'm so sorry. We're all hoping for the best. She is 67 years old, very involved in the church that was on the 1st floor of that building. What can you tell me about her and what you guys are going to do after this? Obviously, no one is really let within a block of the building.
We're going to continue. We're going to go to the councilwoman's office, and they're doing the best that they can to reference a hospital list and to find out if she's at any of the hospitals. And that's where we're going to head after here and just wait and stand by until we get any more information.
I know you're hopeful and you're keeping your spirits high, so our best wishes to both of you as you continue to search with her. We will be here throughout the day as well, so keep us posted. Thank you guys very much. Brooke, back to you. This is the real concern at this point. We do not know how many people are unaccounted for. The mayor's office not wanting to put a number out there because it is still so early. But as soon as we have more, we'll update you.
We will stay in close contact with you and our other crews there in Harlem. Poppy Harlow, thank you so much.
Tonight at 7 on CNN.
Still a number of people unaccounted for this afternoon after the massive explosion this morning in Manhattan's East Harlem neighborhood. The numbers still hold that we have here, so at least 2 people are dead. This is what we're hearing, and more than 24 hurt. 2 FBI agents are also injured. Those are among the numbers hurt from the blast, expected to be okay. That's the latest word we got. This blast absolutely leveled 2 buildings with stores and apartments. In fact, neighbors multiple blocks away felt the explosion, shattered windows, removed walls. One man says the force knocked his door off and sent his cat flying.
All of a sudden, this explosion goes off. Boom! The kinetic energy had the door fly open. My cat flies out the room, and I'm like, yo, what's going on here? My son was asleep. He pops up trying to figure out what's going on. The first thing I thought was one of the pothole covers, remembering what happened what it was about 2 years ago on 42nd Street. That's what I thought it was. About 10 minutes later, there's a fire truck right there. I was able to get up there before all this had gotten blocked off. And what I saw there was a lot of chaos.
My goodness. Don Lemon is there for us in the midst of it. Don is on the phone. Don, tell me what you're seeing right now.
Excuse me. I'm seeing a lot of firefighters here on the scene still. Not as many as there were a little bit earlier, Brooke. And they're still putting water on this scene, trying to douse those hot spots. And I would imagine now that they have gotten they've gotten this gas main shut off, that they feel that they're out of danger at least of another explosion. But I'm seeing firefighters. Firefighters are walking away. Some people they're in the shift change right now. And I just spoke to one of the firefighters, and I said, this is just before you were coming to me, I said, do you think there's anyone under there? And he goes, all I can tell you, sir, is that there's definite possibility, and that's why we're still searching. So what happened, Brooke, is when they had the bulk of the firefighters out on the scene earlier, when the blast happened earlier, I blew the bricks off of the building, and there was rubble on the sidewalk. So what the firefighters did, they brought a big group of them out here with buckets, using their hands to go through the debris and the rubble and to remove it. And they have now put a big pile of debris in the middle of Park Avenue between 116th and 117th Street. And so now what they're using bigger equipment, since they have gotten a lot of this rubble out of the way, to go further into the building and remove some of that rubble. And then there are other firefighters that are now inside of this place where there aren't any hot spots. There are other firefighters in there with their hands now looking. We also saw dogs a little bit earlier on the scene. I guess they were trying to sniff to see if there was any bodies or anything like that. The electricity in that block is shut off. It's not shut off in the block that I'm in. I'm just one block over, standing next to these police officers here, and I'm at the community board. And they're allowing me inside of the police lines, but we're essentially the only crew that's allowed inside the police lines here. But again, it's just unbelievable. It's a firefighter who walked by just moments ago, said, I haven't seen firefighters that looked on their faces like this in quite some time. They're saying it's just horrible, and they still don't know if there are people still underneath this debris, Brooke.
Yeah, I mean, with the smoke and the rubble and those pictures initially coming out, I mean, everyone here, I'm sitting here in New York City as well, and it's like everyone just harkened back to those first few moments after 9/11. Don Lemon for us in East Harlem. Don, thank you. Coming up, it is an international mystery that has investigators around